If you were into FNaF Fangames during 2015, you've most likely heard of RickyG, or RickyG as he is now known as. Even if you've never heard of him before, you've probably still seen at least one of his games at some point when browsing the internet. He released a total of 25 FNaF Fangames, most of which were released in 2015. And you see where I'm going with this. Yeah, I'll be covering all of his games in this video. The most noteworthy thing about RickyG is just how old some of his games were. He actually released 6 games before FNaF 3 came out, with the first one coming out in 2014. RickyG was one of, if not the first prolific FNaF fangame developer to become well known within the FNaF community, as most FNaF fangame developers at the time had only made 1 or 2 FNaF fangames. And like half of the 2015 FNaF fangame developers, RickyG eventually deleted all of his FNaF fangames, but his games being as popular as they are have since resurfaced and can be played today. For the most part, that is. There are a lot of RickyG games that went under the radar upon their release, and some are considered lost media. Let's start this off with an example. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 Top Down. This is a fan-made sequel to the FNaF fangame that was released in Halloween 2014 called Five Nights at Freddy's Top Down. We know little to nothing about this game since it's lost media, and there doesn't appear to be any videos of the game. RickyG's fan-made sequel is also lost and has equally as little information on it. All we know is that it apparently came out on the 6th of December 2014. This game is so obscure that even RickyG himself seems to have forgotten that he actually made it, with him often citing his next FNaF fangame as being his first, although it did begin development before FNaF 2 Top Down, so maybe he meant it was the first that he made but didn't release. What's really funny is that all of this started because RickyG wanted to make a game that would scare his sister. He had experience using Game Maker and wanted to make a game based off the scariest game in years using Game Maker, that of course being Five Nights at Freddy's. It began development in Halloween 2014. It was originally intended on being a troll game that was unbeatable, but he later wanted to make a full-on remake of FNaF 1. That game would simply be called Five Nights at Freddy's Game Maker Edition. It was released to the public on the 10th of January 2015. After hearing when it was released, you can probably imagine what this game looks like. Yeah, it's hand-drawn. So this game has a very different camera map and the rooms look very different to how they look in FNaF 1. This has an exit and bathroom camera, which wasn't in the original game. Well, the original did have a restroom camera, but they showed the outside, whilst this game actually shows the inside of the bathroom, so you can spy on people when they're taking a piss. The rooms look amateur, there's not really much in the rooms and they aren't textured at all. The hallway looks like a tunnel with there being water in the background, but it's actually just a blue floor. What about the animatronics? They don't look very good, but they also don't look that bad either. They're just passable 2D versions which have the potential to be scary, but they aren't really that menacing. Considering how this was January 2015 though, a time where having an original 3D model in your FNaF fangame was a cutting edge idea, the game overall looks okay, but like just about every game that came out in 2015, it's not impressive by today's standards. The office is also drastically different. You can't scroll and it only has one door. The office is definitely the most detailed room in the game, but it's also the least creepy. It lacks the claustrophobic feel that FNaF 1's office had, and the lighting is way too bright. I think the cameras at least felt abandoned and lonely. Now let's talk about the gameplay, the most important part. One big thing to note with this game, as well as all of RickyG's games going forward, is that they were scripted. They oftentimes require you to view the cameras to activate someone's AI, so everyone's movement is nothing like how it was in FNaF 1. A very common one is that when someone is in the camera outside your office, they will enter when you look at them in a camera. That's the case in this game with the hallway for every animatronic besides Foxy. You have a power usage like the first game, but it goes down a lot quicker. It's not measured by percentage this time though. There's a power meter which goes down whenever you close a door, turn on the light, or use the cameras. With there only being one door, everyone obviously attacks from that door. Bonnie and Chica act pretty much the same as each other. They'll get to your door and you have to close it if you see them using the door light. They will leave literally as soon as you close a door, so you only need to close a door for less than a second. Unlike the first game, they will kill you regardless if your camera is up or not. Foxy will run at the door. This time though, you'll hear him running even if your camera is down. He doesn't drain the power this time. Freddy acts very different. Watching him doesn't seem to do anything. Also, the stage camera goes offline for the rest of the night whenever someone leaves. When Freddy gets to your door, he will jam the door light, but you'll know if it's at the door when you see him in the hallway. This game is so broken. If you don't look at your camera at all, no one will attack you until you just get killed by Bonnie for seemingly no reason. You'd think that would make it better because it stops you from cheesing the game. Well, it doesn't make the game worse, but it's still clunky as fuck. The kill timers of the animatronics are really poorly programmed that can kill you instantly if they get to the door. It's pretty much impossible to play the game properly. Golden Freddy is in the game and can appear in your office like how he does in FNaF 1. I never encountered this, but it can also jump scare you randomly right after getting jump scared by another animatronic, typically Freddy. I don't know if this is a glitch or intentional, but it predicted an Easter egg that would later be added to the console ports of FNAF 1, where Golden Freddy jump scares you during the game over screen. The phone calls in the game are literally just the FNAF 1 phone calls, so I don't need to explain them. There are a few lore differences, the biggest one being is that you actually play as someone named Floyd Cook, not Mike Schmidt, as revealed in the paychecks. Also, this game takes place in 1983 as opposed to 1993, meaning it probably takes place before FNAF 2 as well. By the way, it's never actually been confirmed that FNAF 1 takes place in 1993. Most people believe it because MatPat theorized it takes place that year because you get paid what the minimum wage was in 1993. I found in the game's files an image that explains Golden Freddy's origins. In this game, Golden Freddy is possessed by the phone guy, which some people believed at the time because in a Night 5 phone call, you hear Golden Freddy scream and what sounds like the "It's me" voice. Golden Freddy has been stored in the backstage for many years, which is not visible in the cameras. One strange thing is that each night is actually in its own application. This is likely due to RickyG not knowing how to program a save feature at the time. The custom night is very different. You can barely customize the difficulty and instead just decide if you want someone to be on easy or hard. The max mode is actually in a separate application, which in this game is called the Cupcake Challenge, as a reference to the second hardest challenge in FNAF 2. So that was Five Nights at Freddy's Game Maker Edition. Terrible game, but it's from the pre-FNAF 3 era, so that's to be expected. As evident by the fact that this game was actually quite popular, so much so that they got a sequel, Five Nights at Freddy's 2 Game Maker Edition. The game was released on the 25th of January 2015. This was a remake of FNAF 2 in the same style as the first FNAF Game Maker Edition. We've already established how poorly made the first game was, which was simply a FNAF 1 clone. This, however, is a FNAF 2 clone that began development a matter of days after the first game was released. This was once again released with each night being in its own application. When you open night 1, you get a hand-drawn replica of the opening cutscene of FNAF 2. It takes place in a dining room from the first game. The phone calls are also the same as the ones in FNAF 2. FNAF 2 Game Maker Edition is a lot more faithful to the original FNAF 2 than the first game. This has the exact same camera map layout, but it's mirrored. You have both the vents, the hallway, and you can look left to right. However, this does not function the same. The music box is kinda broken. It runs down a lot quicker, and the warning you get to say that the music box is about to run out gives you about 2 seconds to wind up the music box. If you click on the music box, it will wind up all the way to the top, regardless on how low it is. On night 1, Toy Bonnie and Toy Chica are active. Like the original FNAF 2, they'll appear in events. Toy Chica will be on the left and Toy Bonnie will be on the right. When you wear the mask, Toy Bonnie will appear in the office. In the original FNAF 2, they'll only kill you if you view the monitor while they're in the vent. In this version though, they'll kill you regardless, and they'll do it much quicker. You barely even get enough time to check the vent lights. FNAF 2 Game Maker Edition does not have the vent cams, so they'll enter the vents from cam 7 or 8. In the original FNAF 2, Toy Freddy is active on night 1, however I didn't see him until night 2 in this version. At the start of night 2 you get the same cutscene as the one in night 1, but this time Bonnie and Chica are looking at you. On night 2, a lot of enemies become active. There's Toy Freddy who'll attack from the hallway. In this game, you can get rid of him by shining a light at him. If you don't, he'll appear in an office and you have to wear the mask. Mangle can also appear in a hallway and you do the same. Apparently Mangle can appear in the right vents like they do in FNAF 2, but I never saw them in the vents. Foxy and Balloon Boy act pretty much the same as how they acted in the original, but they're more aggressive. You can just be in a prized corner camera for most of the night, only putting the monitor down when you hear the vents or the hallway ambience. This game also has a very poor recreation of the Give Life minigame. There's no transition, you just get it right after dying. It doesn't deactivate anyone's AI, so you can get killed whilst playing it. And the monitor panel UI is still there, and you'll get killed by Toy Chica if you click it during the minigame. I would say this is a bit better than the first game. It feels more like an actual game because the animatronics do different things and you can actually deal with them, and I think the visuals are better. However, it's still a much worse version of FNAF 2 that lacks the same atmosphere and intensity. Say what you want about FNAF 2, but you can't deny that it is a lot more complex than FNAF 1. With there being 11 enemies active as opposed to the mere 4 that FNAF 1 has, and double the amount of mechanisms, which would make it a lot harder for an amateur to recreate. You've probably noticed that I completely skipped over night 3 onwards, and the reason why I did that is because they aren't in the game. FNAF 2 Game Maker Edition was cancelled 11 days after the night 2 demo was released. I couldn't find out the reasons for why it got cancelled, but it was most likely due to how difficult it was to make a faithful remake of FNAF 2 with little experience. So the rest of the nights would have probably been bugs to the point where they were impossible. At this point, it was unknown when FNAF 3 was going to get released, so rather than waiting for the game to come out, RickyG started working on an original FNAF fan game called Five Nights at Freddy's. The game was actually in development at the same time as FNAF 3 Game Maker Edition. There were quite a few teasers released for the game, which was unusual for a FNAF fan game at the time. Most of them were dark rooms with an animatronic in it. Two of them were quite interesting though. One is an image of a ghost coming out of Toy Bonnie after his head was taken off by Ender01, who is probably supposed to be Toy Bonnie's endoskeleton. And one says, "Who is a purple man?" with an image of the purple man. One strange thing is that this teaser says Five Nights at Endo's by Golden Games. I couldn't find any information on this game other than the fact that Golden Games was a friend of RickyG, so I guess this was actually a teaser for that game and not Five Nights at Freddy's. But for some reason it's in the game's files. If anyone has any information on this, then please let me know. Five Nights at Freddy's was released on the 8th of February 2015. Unlike the FNAF Game Maker Edition games, this was made up of reused assets. Most of them were taken from FNAF 1 and 2. When you press New Game, you get a note welcoming Mike Schmidt, the character you play as, to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, after he came back from vacation. This is quite a unique setup. Usually the night guard has just started working at the pizzeria, whilst this time you've already been working there prior to the events of the game. While Mike was gone, the animatronics have been replaced. The game takes place in a FNAF 1 location. Same office, same rooms, same map, everything. There's been a few alterations, like the posters of the animatronics have been replaced with their toy counterparts. You have a power usage, which goes down if you use the cameras. If you run out of power, you die. As the title would suggest, the toy animatronics are the main threats. Toy Freddy, Bonnie and Chica act mostly the same. Toy Bonnie will attack from the left, Toy Freddy and Chica will attack from the right. You can't close the doors or use the lights in this game, so you have to wear the mask when you see them. You've got to react very quickly though, because their kill times are about as fast as the Wizards in FNAF 2. They're supposed to make a sound when they get to your doorway. However, they don't always make the sound. You can't wear the mask for too long or you'll die due to toxicity. When you die, you get a game over screen that says, "You are one of us now, Mike," while it plays the game over music from Five Nights at Fuckboys. They can only enter your office when you're looking at the camera, because like I said, RickyG's games are scripted, and not very well scripted. There is one enemy that prevents you from completely cheesing the game though, and that is Mangle, but in this game he's just referred to as Foxy. He will be behind the curtains in Pirate Cove and you have to keep watching him in that camera to stop him from killing you. Foxy doesn't become active until night 2, so you can beat night 1 by doing nothing. If you get killed by Foxy, the game over message will be different. It'll instead say, "You forgot to check Pirate Cove, didn't you?" Don't start thinking the game becomes difficult though, because it really doesn't. Toy Freddy, Bonnie and Chica will mostly only attack once per night, because you only need to view one camera. It sounds really weird that the animatronics AI revolve around what camera you look at, but that is indeed how this game works. Balloon Boy is also in the game and becomes active on night 3. However, I never saw him once, which could be because I wasn't looking at the right camera. He attacks from a left doorway and you have to wear the mask. However, he won't kill you and doesn't have a jump scare. He'll instead just appear in the office. I'm guessing he either stops you from viewing the camera or wearing the mask. There is one more enemy that is apparently active on night 3, but didn't see them until night 4, and that is Golden Bonnie. Golden Bonnie is made up of renders from Bonnie from FNAF 1 recolored to a greenish yellow colour. One image of him was a fan made with a Bonnie jump scare with a face by Rapawned but recolored yellow. Golden Bonnie is the biggest threat in the game. To be fair though, he's the only real threat. He acts the same as Toy Bonnie, but he actually attacks more frequently. This actually makes the game somewhat challenging, because you have to be quick with checking the camera and putting the mask on. But it's still just so boring, because it's just 2 enemies maximum who are easily dealt with on every night. There's a golden Toy Freddy Easter egg who I never encountered. In the files he's referred to as Yellow Bear. By looks of it, he works the same as how Golden Freddy works in FNAF 1. He'll replace the Toy Freddy poster in the West Hall corner. Then he'll appear in the office. I'm not sure if flipping up the camera does anything or if you have to wear the mask. For those familiar with Five Nights at Freddy's, I'm about to address the elephant in the room. This game became infamous back in the day for the save feature being broken. The load game option doesn't work, and if you die you have to restart the whole game. Well, believe it or not, I've actually figured out a way to bypass this bug, and it doesn't require hacking the game. Basically, this bug doesn't happen every time. You'll sometimes be allowed to load game. When it loads the first time, it will save for the rest of your run. To make it so that you never lose your data, just keep dying on night 1 and trying to load game until it eventually works. This bug was prevalent in most of RickyG's FNaF fan games, but you can work around it using the same technique on all of his games. So this game actually does have some lore to it. You get a phone call from a day shift guard, Chloe Smith, on each night. Fun fact, by the way, Chloe is voiced by RickyG's mom.
Hello, hi, I'm Chloe Smith. I'm the new head security guard. They hired me after the previous one went missing.
It is mentioned that the person who used to work as a night guard went missing. Chloe looks into what happened to the previous night guard. In the night 4 phone call, Chloe says that she found a red box in a backstage that contains something. Before she can say what it contained though, the call gets cut off and you hear the night 5 phone call in FNaF 1.
I went to the backstage and there was a sealed box in the corner. It was a bit damp and red. It seemed so out of place. I opened it and there was a suit that was...
So Chloe gets killed while on the phone, but it's so awkward, it just abruptly cuts to the voice and that's it. The box that she was referring to, I believe, is a puppet's music box, as a puppet can appear in a backstage as a harmless Easter egg. Ender 1 can also appear in a restroom as an Easter egg. On night 5 you get a phone call, but it's just static. When you beat night 5 you get a paycheck. You can access night 6, which is the final night, by pressing ready for Freddy on the keyboard in the menu. I have nothing to say about night 6, it's the same as night 5. When you beat night 6 it shows a resignation message from Mike Schmidt, saying that he quit his job as a night guard. So that's 5 Nights at Toy Freddy's. Just like the first 2 FNaF Game Maker Edition games, this is not a good game. It's also poorly programmed to the point where it lacks any kind of fear factor or intensity. Although it does have a decent premise for an early 2015 FNaF fan game, and it is a step up in originality from the last 2 games RickyG made. One last thing, the ending screen also says you can never escape Freddy's, which is teasing the fact that this game was getting a sequel. 5 Nights at Toy Freddy's 2 was released on the 19th of February 2015. It opens with a FNaF 2 adjacent cutscene where you're in a dining room while wearing a broken mask. Then a shadow woman appears in the room. It is later revealed that this shadow woman is actually the ghost of Chloe. Interesting fact, the mask that you're wearing in the cutscene is actually Springtrap's face edited. FNaF 3 was not out yet, so this was taken from a frame of his jump scare seen in the trailer and promotional screenshots. 5 Nights at Toy Freddy's 2 takes place 22 years after the events of the first game. In this game you play as Richard, who has been dared by his friends Peter and Dan to spend 5 nights at the abandoned Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. That's right, this game predicted FNaF 2 a whole year before the game came out. By the way, the reason why he agrees to spend 5 nights in an abandoned pizzeria is because he'll get $10. These are supposed to be kids, so I guess $10 is quite a lot of money for them, but even then, that's a small amount for something like that. This takes place in the same location as the first game, and I don't just mean canonically, I mean it's literally got the same office and camera map. Even the game over screen is very similar. The location has been edited slightly to look more decayed, but it barely looks different to the first game overall. If you think that's lazy though, the mechanisms are also just rehashed from the first game. You have to wear the mask if someone enters your office and you have power usage. Golden Toy Freddy is the main enemy in this game and replaces normal Toy Freddy. In this game he's a bit more withered than he is in the first game. He acts the same as how he acts in the first game. He'll appear in a hallway and you have to wear the mask. The biggest problem with this game is actually not the fact that it's mostly the same as the first game. There is literally no reason to check the cameras at all. So you can cheese mostly the whole game by doing nothing, only wearing the mask the one time Toy Freddy attacks on each night. Balloon Boy and Golden Bonnie make a return. Balloon Boy is just a head that's damaged, this time he attacks from your office. When he enters you have to wear the mask. Once again he doesn't kill you and just hinders you in some way. The puppet is actually an enemy in this game. Like Balloon Boy, he is slightly withered. He'll attack from a left door but the mask won't fool him, you instead have to stay still. Also yes, the puppet is male in this game, but we all thought the puppet was male in 2015. Golden Bonnie also makes a return and this time he is Springtrap. Yeah, again, this was made before FNaF 3 came out, so most of his renders are just his jump scare or the thumbnail from FNaF 3. However, his jump scare in this game is actually William Afton getting spring locked in the FNaF 3 trailer. Golden Bonnie can appear in 3 secret cameras that could be accessed by pressing 2. The cameras are these real life images of white hallways. It's completely pointless, but at least give credit for having a map toggle before FNAF 3. The Endoskeleton is also an enemy in this game. He can also appear in the secret cameras. If Golden Bonnie or the Endoskeleton enter your office, you just have to wear the mask. And lastly, there's Chloe, who is active from night 2. When she appears in your office, you have to stay still until she leaves. The most noticeable difference this game has to the first game is definitely its story. You learn a bit more about the pizzeria through the phone calls. You get a phone call from Dan on each night. Dan is voiced by RickyG himself. So the other friend, Peter, is actually the son of Mike Schmidt, who told him about how the animatronics tried to stuff him into a Freddy Fazbear suit and that the mask fooled them. And he sounds very concerned for Richard's safety.
And I don't want to have to be to blame for my friend's death, so please don't die. Please. My dad would kill me. Well, anyway, that should be about it. You have to stay until 6 a.m. or else we won't give you the $10 we promised. Yeah, so I'll talk to you tomorrow when you get there again. Good luck.
It is mentioned that Endoskeleton is the Endoskeleton of Golden Freddy, who in this universe did the Bite of 87. They might have been referring to Golden Toy Freddy, as normal Golden Freddy is never mentioned.
Well, apparently it was once used for a Golden Freddy animatronic, but it malfunctioned and bit an employee back in 1987.
When you beat Night 5, it tells you that Richard was killed by Chloe after he tried to leave the pizzeria. A police investigation was launched to find Richard. Peter and Dan felt very guilty. Officer Sandy went to the pizzeria to investigate. Despite the night guard dying, you actually get to play Night 6 by typing "Ready to Die" in the menu. In this night you play as Officer Sandy. Aside from it being a different player though, nothing changes from Night 5. When you beat Night 6 you get a note addressed to Richard's parents telling them that their son was found dead in a Freddy suit. Also, Richard's last name is Fitzgerald, meaning that he's probably the son of Jeremy Fitzgerald, who isn't implied to have any other lore relevance. He could be the employee who got bitten by an animatronic, but I feel like they would establish that since he's the father of Richard, so maybe not. And that's the end of Five Nights at Toy Freddy's 2. This somehow managed to be even worse than the first game, because it removes any reason to view the cameras, and the animatronics are even more bugged. Despite how obviously terrible these games are though, it's certainly interesting to see a FNAF fan game from the pre-FNAF 3 era try to be more than just a FNAF 1 and 2 clone and having an original narrative. And it is funny how there's a character who's the son of Mike Schmidt, whose family would later be a big part of the FNAF lore. Five Nights at Toy Freddy's is one of the first popular FNAF fan game series, but that's really the only appeal these games have. They're very dated and do not function anymore. Before moving on, I'd like to give a quick mention to a very mysterious game that RickyG made, Five Nights at Freddy's 3. The game was apparently released on the 19th of February 2015. The game is lost media and there is no surviving videos of the gameplay that are known to exist anymore. There are a few images which shows that it takes place in a FNAF 3 location. It sounds like a fan-made sequel to Five Nights at Freddy's by Pink Ken, but it might just be a name-only inspiration since these games look like they play out completely differently. Like Five Nights at Freddy's though, this game did appear to be a joke game. It definitely did release, as there are comments on its archived game drop pages from people who claim to have actually played the game. This could possibly be the first FNAF related game to take place in a FNAF 3 location, as it was released 2 weeks before FNAF 3, so it's a shame that a game like this is now lost to time. It's crazy how a game that was made by who was one of the most well-known FNAF fan game developers at the time not only went unnoticed, but has been reduced to almost nothing. While Five Nights at Freddy's 3 is quite literally a FNAF fan game that no one remembers, the Five Nights at Toy Freddy's games were some of the most popular FNAF fan games from early 2015. So RickyG started working on Five Nights at Toy Freddy's 3. It began development a few days after the release of the second game, right before FNAF 3 came out. A demo was released on the 6th of March 2015. Five Nights at Toy Freddy's 3 might have actually been tied with Five Nights at Fuckboys 3 as the most anticipated FNAF fan game during March of 2015, which was the biggest month in FNAF history, and this is what the game looked like. RickyG attempted to make a FNAF fan game with semi-original 3D assets. A lot of it was still reused, because as you can tell by the colourless visuals, RickyG had practically no experience modelling. The demo contained 2 nights. You have to charge a generator which acts like a music box mechanic. There's 2 doors in front of you. When someone appears there, you have to close the door. Toy Freddy, Toy Bonnie and Toy Chica can attack from your doors. The demo was met with negative reviews, being criticised for its very dull visuals. The demo was deleted and is now lost. When you beat Night 1 you get a minigame where you play as a purple guy who is outside the pizzeria. When you go to the pizzeria you get a withered golden Toy Freddy jump scare with text that reads, "They will know the joy of creation." Then your game crashes. is. This is a recolored edit of With a Toy Freddy by Christian 2099. There's also a minigame when you beat Night 2. The purple guy is in a dining room which has a ghost of a dead child. When you touch a dead child, the minigame ends. Then you get a thank you message from RickyG. While we do know mostly everything about the demo, it would be nice to have it found, as it does have its place in FNaF fangame history. Shortly after the release of the demo, the game restarted development and was going to be very different to what it was originally going to be like. Many believe that the reason for why the demo was redone was because of its negative reception. However, the real reason why is actually because the game's files got corrupted, which forced RickyG to restart development. Five Nights at Toy Freddy's 3 was eventually complete and released on the 29th of March 2015. This was made up entirely of Photoshop assets. Sadly though, the damage had already been done. The hype for the game died out drastically after the demo was critically panned. When the game was finally released, it was nowhere near as popular as the first two games, with Risk Grim, who'd played every game besides the elusive Five Nights at Freddy's 3 and FNaF 2 top-down, not playing the full version. It opens with a news article saying, Fazbear returns. The game takes place after Fazbear's Fright burnt down. A man named Gerald Smith has opened a museum called Fazbear's Revenge, the Museum, after he brought the animatronic parts that were auctioned off as mentioned at the end of FNaF 3. So this game looks completely different to the first game. In fact, aside from the animatronics, most of it wasn't reused assets from the FNaF games. Although it looks terrible. It honestly doesn't look much better than the demo. Everything is just really empty, but doesn't have any creepy atmosphere or anything. It looks like RickyG wanted to use as much original assets as possible for this game, and obviously if it was hand-drawn it would clash hard with the PNGs of the FNaF characters. But it ended up just looking really boring, which is unfortunate because I really like the setup of it being in a museum, but it does not look like a museum. It looks like someone just wiped their ass against the walls. Okay, there is obviously more to a game than just its graphics, so let's talk about the gameplay. The office is similar to the FNaF 3 office, in the sense that it has a doorway and a very long window. The animatronics active are Golden Toy Freddy, Springtrap, who is referred to as Spring Bonnie, and Phantom Freddy. However, Phantom Freddy is actually just normal Freddy, but in this game he has been burnt. Golden Toy Freddy and Freddy will appear at your window. Freddy will walk past the window while Golden Toy Freddy will stay still. You have to close the door until they leave. Spring Bonnie will run at you. You'll hear him when he attacks. When you hear him, you have to close the door. You don't have much time to react, so you've got to be very quick. Spring Bonnie can also attack from the vent. When he enters, you have to close the vent. You'll hear him when he gets in. You have a power usage which goes down when you close the door or seal the vent. You can recharge a power by charging a generator in Cam 7. Cam 5, 6 and 7 can be viewed by toggling the map. Yes, I said 6, 7, who fucking cares? The generator charges slowly, but you have well over enough time to charge it. When you charge a generator, it'll open the door and vent, so you can't cheese again by closing the door and vent the whole night. This is definitely better than the first two games, because it's actually playable. While there are only 3 animatronics, I actually did encounter all of them multiple times, and they do serve as a threat. Spring Bonnie is the first enemy in a RickyG game to actually make you panic, as it is quite intense when he runs at you. However though, this game is still pretty damn bad. The animatronics AI is still broken, making it so they'll only attack if you view a certain camera. This comes down to who's in what room at what time you look at the camera, but if you're lucky, you might only get attacked 2 or 3 times on night 6. Yes, there's a night 6, I spoiled it, but that's what we've come to expect from this series. Like the first 2 games, there is quite a bit of lore to it. On each night you'll get a phone call from Gerald Smith, voiced by Zombie Wars SMT. On night 1 and 2, he just explains how you play the game. On night 3, he tells you that they tried to fix the generator, but they accidentally made it worse, FNaF 2 style.
I've been trying to fix the power today, you know, so it doesn't drain, and there's unlimited power, but I think I actually managed to make it worse.
On night 3 onwards, the power goes down even if you're not using it, but it doesn't really make any difference. He also tells you that a foul odour has been coming out of the vents, and they're going to be looking into what's causing it.
Before I go, I just wanted to mention that some people have been complaining about foul smells coming from the ventilation today. I'm gonna take a peek tomorrow and see what I can fix.
On night 5, the museum closes down temporarily because it smells so bad. At the end of each night, you play as Spring Bonnie, who is chasing after a shadow child. In the night 1 minigame, you appear to be in what looks like a classroom, but I don't think that's actually what it's supposed to be. In the night 2 minigame, the child hides in a Golden Toy Freddy suit. When you go near him, the minigame ends. In the night 3 minigame, the child is running away from Spring Bonnie, leaving a trail of blood behind. So I guess a ghost child returns to their body, which was inside the Golden Toy Freddy suit. Or maybe this isn't a ghost, and the child died after hiding in the Golden Toy Freddy suit and instantly possessed it. I don't know exactly what happened here, but that is an absurd amount of blood. In the night 4 minigame, they're once again running from Spring Bonnie and go into a room past a puddle of blood. Then in the night 5 minigame, you're in a room with 3 dead people and a massive puddle of blood. You go up to the Golden Toy Freddy suit, who takes off its head. Then you get the bad ending. Yep, there are multiple endings to this game, which was a fairly novel concept at the time with FNAF 3 not being a month old yet. So how do you get the good ending? It's simple, but does involve replaying the game again. In the Night 4 minigame, there is a hammer on the bottom left that you're supposed to pick up. Then on Night 5 you get the same minigame, but this time you smash Golden Toy Freddy with a hammer. Then you get the good ending. I have no idea what is supposed to be happening in these endings. What are the implications of the bad ending? It didn't show Spring Bonnie dying or anything, and why is Spring Bonnie smashing Golden Toy Freddy good? Maybe it's the canon ending, but I don't really see the point of there being two endings. It feels like a good ending was just shoehorned in for the sake of it. On Night 6, Gerald tells you that the smell from the vent is gone, but they've noticed that Spring Bonnie has started to smell really bad.
There is nothing in the vent. Fresh air is blowing right through. It's so strange. But then I looked at the old version of Bonnie, and as soon as I went near it, it smelled really foul. It was the same stench that everyone was complaining about, and now I realize he's the one I always show to the audience. The others just sit in the next room and stare. I'm gonna have to look inside the suit tomorrow, see why it smells. I'm hoping it's just fuel leak or something, and not something else.
Yet again, Night 6 is the same as Night 5, say no more. When you beat Night 6 you get a news article saying the museum is closing after 3 people were found dead. It also mentions that the animatronics were acting up, with Spring Bonnie smashing Golden Toy Freddy with a hammer. It also says that Spring Bonnie and Freddy are going to be destroyed. So that's Five Nights at Toy Freddy's 3. Like I said, this is better than RickyG's previous games, but it's still far from being a good game. While it does function a lot better, it's still really boring and the story is underwhelming. Like the previous games, I will give credit for having some unique ideas for the time, but it really hasn't aged well. Before moving on, I'd like to mention there was actually a 5 fucking Nights at Toy Freddy's that was planned in around April 2015. If you ask me, I think it should have been called 5 Nights at Toy Fuckboys. Anyway though, the game was cancelled and we don't know anything about it. I've made it pretty clear in this video many times that RickyG was a popular FNAF fan game developer at the time. So would you believe that there's not one, but 2 FNAF fan games he made that went completely unnoticed? And spoilers, there's even more later down the line. Unlike Five Nights at Freddy's 3 though, this game was somehow found. That game is Five Nights at Illuminati's. Not to be confused with the Five Nights at Illuminati's games by Devin Manning, which were actually very popular somehow. So much that I inspired a fan game of this series. I think that just sums up the quality of early 2015 FNAF fan games. The game was released on the 26th of May 2015. It was first released as a demo on the 2nd of April 2015. So I'm going to talk about this game before some games that actually came out before the full version. The demo is now lost, by the way. When you press new game, you get a news article saying that a secret shadow organization needs a night guard to watch the place. You'll get free Doritos and Mountain Dew. Sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? Oh my god. I've played over 1,000 FNAF fan games, most of which came out in the 2010s, and RickyG's Five Nights at Illuminati's is honestly one of the worst FNAF fan games I've ever played. Yes, it's even worse than the Fright After Fredbear's Diner. Believe it or not, Five Nights at Toy Freddy's 3 isn't even the worst looking RickyG game. Everything is just a grey, empty, poorly textured wall. In the office, there's a poster of Shrek, Teletubbies, Risk Rim, and a mixture of MLG stuff, but that's really all there is to it. Like I said, visuals aren't the most important part of the game. When Illuminati appears in your doorway, you're supposed to wear the mask. However, the mask just straight up doesn't work, you'll just get killed when they show up. The game over screen says, "Get Shrek'd," so this game is impossible, right? Well, no, I was actually able to beat it. How did I beat it, you may ask? It's because this game is both broken to the point where it's unplayable and to the point where you can beat it by doing almost nothing. How the fuck did they manage that? Well, it's as simple as this. Like RickyG's previous games, the enemy's AI revolves around you looking at the cameras, so if you don't look at the cameras, no one will ever attack you, and you never have to look at the cameras. There is one character who you are supposed to watch a camera for, but he does fuck all.
Oh wait, also you can't outsmart the Illuminati. If you don't use your cameras he will instantly YIFF your dick, so be careful.
While this does make the game beatable, it literally requires you to do almost nothing. And would you believe that I haven't actually gotten to the worst part about this game? You know how the first 3 Five Nights at Toy Freddy's games were infamous for a bug where the save data would sometimes get erased? Well, this game deliberately erases your save data when you die. When you press load game, you'll get an Illuminati who says, "Trollololol, I deleted your save file, mwahaha, just don't click on the recycling bin." You fucking what, mate? Then it shows 4 folders. One says your save file, another says the old version of Five Nights at Freddy's 3 that got corrupted, your mom's secret porn stash, and redacted. Yes, if you die, you go all the way back to the start. So you better be cheesing this game or you're fucked. There is 2 things that keep you from beating the game completely idle, the Doritos and Mountain Dew. If you don't drink the Mountain Dew, you'll die of thirst, and if you don't eat the Doritos, your vision will fade and you'll eventually die. Which lacks logic, but that's the least of this game's problems. Okay, so there's 4 Illuminatis in this game, but I only saw one of them because you die in like 15 seconds on night 2 if you look at the camera. And I would rather swallow molten acid than replay this game 56 fucking times so I can explain what each character does. Fuck that shit. Anyway though, they're all from Devin Manning's Five Nights at Illuminati's. Side note, Devin's Five Nights at Illuminati's games are also abysmal, and the second game might even be worse than RickyG's Five Nights at Illuminati's. One of the enemies is just a normal Illuminati, one is a core who looks like a diamond, one is a soulless one who is a grey Illuminati with a red eye, and one is, this thing, sorry I don't know its name. Okay, there is one thing that I do like about this game, and that's the phone calls. They're pretty funny.
Oh hey, guess you didn't die on the way in like we planned. I mean, welcome to your new job as a security guard for the secret shadow organization Illuminati. Only MLG people get to join us. Well anyway, our mascot goes crazy at night because it is an insomniac, so it can't sleep, and it gets very cranky, so when it sees you it gets jealous of your ability to sleep, and kills you to gain your power of sleep. So to stop it we gave you an Illuminati mask to fool it into thinking you're just like it and that you don't have the ability to sleep. Oh, are you still there, Godamit? Why aren't you dead yet? I'm getting hungry down in this chamber. I mean, good job on your first night, you did great. I'm getting sick and tired of you getting out of here alive. So now I set the animatronic to its nightmare setting. It is active right now and out to kill you. The old one is also really aggressive. I hope you die. I need food. Good luck. Ha ha ha. Ha. Ha 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 ha.
So yeah, this is obviously a joke game, and some of you might think that I've been overreacting, but nonetheless, it's still an awful game that isn't worth playing just to hear the phone calls. When you beat Night 5, it tells you that the Illuminati mascots were scrapped, somehow, and there might be a sequel to this game. However, that is not what his next game would be. FNaF 3 came out during the making of Five Nights at Freddy's 3, but RickyG wanted to finish the game. After the game was released, he tried remaking FNaF 3, with Five Nights at Freddy's 3 Game Maker Edition. It was released on the 6th of April 2015, after spending just 5 days in development. This was the most popular and certainly the most infamous out of the Game Maker Edition games. First off, I will say this definitely looks better than the first 2 games. It actually has a fairly decent recreation of the FNaF 3 office. The other rooms aren't as impressive, but it's a step up from the previous game. Once again, the phone calls are the same as the original game, so I have nothing to say about them. Like FNaF 3, nothing happens on night 1, but on night 2 is when Springtrap becomes active, who as we know is the only enemy who can actually kill you. Before we discuss the main man himself, let's talk about the Phantoms, who are not the same as the ones in the original, except for Phantom Mangle. They will cause an audio error, but this time if you look at cam 4, they will disable the audio instantly. There's Phantom Toy Freddy and Phantom Toy Bonnie, who will appear in the cameras and cause a ventilation error if you don't look away from them. Phantom Freddy is in the game, but this time it just acts the same as Phantom Toy Freddy and Toy Bonnie. However, they barely appear for some reason. If you get an error, it will reboot instantly when you click to reboot the error. Now let's talk about Springtrap. One thing I will say is that he has a better jump scare than how he did in the original game. He takes off his mask, exposing his rotten head. So when the game first came out, it was critically panned. This is when the poor coding really caught up to RickyG. A lot of people overlook the scripting of his previous games because he didn't strategize as much when playing FNaF Fangames. However, FNaF 3 revolves around watching Springtrap. If Springtrap is in cam 7, he won't leave unless you flip your camera down or switch camera, something you never actually need to do. In the original, he takes a direct path to your office. In this game though, he just moves to any camera, which threw a lot of people off at the time, as he would oftentimes just teleport into the office unexpectedly and kill the player, because he has a very short kill timer from when he enters the office. There was also a hilarious bug in the game where the camera panels would just float away and you can't use them for the rest of the night. This was patched in a later update though. This game actually got updated twice. The second one actually changed the menu. If you see Springtrap in cam 2, he will move to the office straight away, so as long as you're keeping track of him, you should be good. The audio still works the same, just play it in a camera adjacent to where Springtrap is and he'll move to it. Springtrap can only enter 2 vents this time, from either cam 8 or cam 9, so there's a 50-50 chance that he'll enter a closed vent. The vent cams are cam 11 and 12. He goes to cam 11 most of the time, so close that vent, and if you hear him enter a vent, check cam 12. And now we get to the most fundamental part of the strategy guide on how to beat FNAF 3 Game Maker Edition. Seal the vent in cam 11, and then watch cam 12 for the rest of the night. If you get an error, reboot it. If you enter cam 12, which you probably won't by the way, seal the vent, and then seal cam 11 again. Yep, you can beat the whole game by just looking at cam 12 the whole time. No need for the audio lore or anything like that. Well, at least you can actually play the game properly if you want, but it's still just so boring. It's just FNAF 3 with no tension, very little that gets in your way. Also, there's no good ending in this game, not even a cheap recreation, it's just not there. I will give FNAF 3 Game Maker Edition this though, it does have some noteworthy changes to FNAF 3, besides just being worse and changing the phantoms. When you die, the game over screen is actually a news article saying that a night guard was killed at Fazbear's Fright, and that a dead man was found inside Springtrap, and the 23-year-old founder was arrested under suspicion of manslaughter. While there aren't any minigames in this game, there are cutscenes between the nights, which are very similar to each other. You're in the FNAF 1 Game Maker Edition location, which is in a dark abandoned state. When you pull up the monitor you'll get an error message, then when you pull it down an animatronic will be in your office. These are known as the old animatronics. Not to be confused with a common alias for the withered animatronics, these are the animatronics from the first game who have been severely damaged. Freddy and Bonnie basically look like a more withered version of their withered counterparts and are missing an arm. Bonnie is missing both arms. Chica is an endoskeleton with only a bit of her suit visible. Weirdly, Foxy is the least damaged of the bunch. In the Night 5 cutscene, you actually get to see the camera feed. You see Golden Freddy, who has an endoskeleton head and is covered in blood. When you pull the monitor down, he jump scares you. Then you get a news article saying, it burns. It's basically the same as the FNAF 3 ending, but it happens on Night 5 instead of Night 6. Fazbear's Fright burned to the ground due to suspected faulty wiring. Originally, the game only had 5 nights, but for some reason an extra 2 nights were added in the updates. There's nothing special about these nights, so I don't know why they were added. When you beat Night 6, you get an image of Fazbear's Fright in an abandoned state, so it wasn't completely destroyed in this universe. When you beat Night 7, you get a thank you message from RickyG. So that's 5 Nights at Freddy's 3 Game Maker Edition. In all honesty, I actually like this one more than the first 2. Don't get me wrong, this is a really bad game. It's an exploitable and dull game that really does feel like it was rushed. But honestly, the first game was probably less functional and the second one wasn't even finished. And the cutscenes were fine, I guess. It's a step down from Five Nights at Toy Freddy's 3, which is already a rubbish game. This was the last RickyG game to actually get a lot of attention, which may or may not have been a result of his last 2 games being met with generally negative feedback. The rest of RickyG's games going forward, with one exception, were only really known by FNAF fangame players, and if you were more of a casual FNAF fan during 2015, you've probably never heard of them. In spite of that though, RickyG still made a lot of FNAF fangames, which shows that he was very passionate about making FNAF fangames, even if he wasn't good at making them. Something does feel a bit off about FNAF 3 Game Maker Edition though. Why does it keep showing you the FNAF 1 location with these broken animatronics, who weren't even in the original FNAF games? And why did it end with a Golden Freddy jump scare? This had nothing to do with FNAF 3 and it felt a bit off. Well, the reason why is because this was actually a teaser for a new game that RickyG was working on. 5 Nights at Freddy's Game Maker Edition, The Return. It was released on the 16th of May 2015. This marked a point where the FNAF Game Maker Edition games went past just being a remake of the FNAF games. This game actually spends a whole month in development, which isn't long at all for a FNAF fan game, but RickyG's previous games each spent about 2 weeks in development, besides Five Nights at Toy Freddy's 3 which had a trouble development. This is probably because on the 27th of April 2015, a huge announcement was made. A full Five Nights at Freddy's game was in the works. I can imagine this would have messed up with the game's development, as RickyG may have intended on it being his final FNAF fan game. As the title and the teasers from FNAF 3 Game Maker Edition would suggest, you are returning to Freddy's. The old pizzeria from the first game has been rediscovered and is going to be turned into a museum. You play as a night guard named Arnold. The location is literally just a location from the first game edited to look abandoned. I will say though, this actually does have quite a creepy atmosphere. I think the ambience goes well with the decayed pizzeria, which looked empty. It's not FNAF 1 level, but actually felt unnerving. I don't like the office though, its flashing lights are really annoying and it hurt my eyes. A few of the cameras are disabled, but become visible on later nights, which is a cool idea, but it doesn't mean anything. Unfortunately, its gameplay holds it back from being scary. Go figure. So the main enemy is old Freddy, who is active on all nights. He will move around the cameras. Right before he attacks, he can actually be seen moving in cam 2 and 5. When Freddy enters your office, you have to play the music using a panel, which will make Freddy run to the show stage. It does have a limited battery, but you'll never come close to running out if you only use it when Freddy is in your office. This game fixed an issue that plagued RickyG's previous games. If you go too long without looking at the camera, Freddy will kill you, meaning that you have to be watching him in the cameras. So Freddy is actually a functional antagonist that requires concentration. Now let's talk about the other characters that were hyped up in the third game. They do nothing. They're so fucking pointless. I'm not even exaggerating. They just appear in the cameras in your office as a quote-unquote distraction, but they do literally nothing. They're supposed to be hallucinations, but they don't hinder you in any way whatsoever. This really does make me think, was this game originally going to be something bigger that was beyond RickyG's abilities? There's two enemies who weren't teased in the third game who actually can kill you though. One is a phantom puppet who can appear in your office when you pull the monitor down. You just have to pull the monitor back up if you see him. The other enemy is none other than Nightmare Freddy, who is based off a teaser where he thought he was a much lighter brown colour and was speculated to be a hybrid animatronic. In this game he has two smaller Freddy heads attached to him. Nightmare Freddy can appear in a random camera and you have to look away from him, however he will kill you if you stare at him for too long. He can also appear in your office and you have to play the music. There is some lore to the game, but not much. You actually don't get phone calls and instead you get a message from your boss named Dave. On night 2 he messages you about foul odour coming from the vents. Never heard that before. This is actually the reason why you hallucinate phantoms, because you're being poisoned. On night 4, you were told they tried to fix the ventilation, but they accidentally made it worse. How original. Then in night 5, he tells you they have to close the place because they found something in the vents, but he refuses to say what it is. When you beat night 5, you get a news article saying that a dead body was found in the ventilation of the old Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and that an investigation is on its way. And that's really all there is to say about this game. This is definitely better than the first 3 FNaF Game Maker Edition games, and to be honest, the first 3 Five Nights at Freddy's games as well. This actually plays out like a FNaF fan game. It has tension and doesn't really have any bugs. However, it's still not very good, there just isn't any variety and it got boring towards the end. This game feels unfinished. It feels like there was supposed to be more to it, but it got cut down a lot. It was certainly a sign that RickyG was getting better at programming, but the game is just so underwhelming. Okay, so the real reason why this game took so long is actually because it was put on hold. There were actually 2 games that got released before the return, and one actually came out on the same day. I decided to talk about the return first because it began development before any of these games. One of them literally came out one day before, and it's more fitting since it was teased in FNaF 3 Game Maker Edition. The next game I'm going to talk about is Five Nights to Destroy. It was released on the 10th of May 2015. When you click new game, it throws you right into the main night. No introduction. You're in this creepy room, which it could be wrong, but this could have been modeled by RickyG. If that's the case, it's not really anything remarkable, but it looks a lot better than a demo of Five Nights at Freddy's 3. In this game, you play as a purple guy who is at the pizzeria in an abandoned state. You can watch the cameras on your tablet. On each night, an animatronic will start moving. At 5 AM, they will reach you. When they appear in the hallway in front of you, you have to axe them or they'll kill you. This is supposed to be the perspective of the purple guy in the FNaF 3 minigames, which is an interesting concept for a FNaF fan game. On night 1 it's Bonnie, on night 2 it's Chica, on night 3 it's Foxy, and on night 4 it's Freddy. Then on night 5 the ghosts of dead children appear in front of you. You then hide in the suit and get spring locked. Then the credits roll, which plays Die in a Fire. Yes, that's literally the whole game. You just wait 3 minutes for an animatronic to appear in the hallway every night and then use an axe. What's even the point in waiting? I guess it's to scare first time players who think something scary will happen, but it just leads to disappointment. This game succeeds in what it's trying to be, just what we saw the FNaF 3 minigames from a first person perspective of the purple guy. But that's all it really is. I really don't have anything to say about this game, so let's just move on. Something you probably didn't realise is that Five Nights at Freddy's 1 actually got a remake, which was released on the 15th of May 2015. It was simply called Five Nights at Freddy's Remake. It opens with a news article saying that Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is looking for a new night guard. So how does this remake compare to the original? It's the same fucking game! Not only does this look exactly like the original game, it also plays out the same. They didn't fix any of the bugs. You can beat night 1 by doing nothing, and on night 2 and 3 you just need to check Pirate Cove. And on night 4 is when Golden Bonnie, the only real threat, becomes active. What's the point in remaking a game if you're not even going to fix its biggest flaws? This really does make me wonder, did RickyG even know how bugged these games were? As evident by how popular the original game is, back then, people overlooked bugs in FNaF fan games most of the time. I'm not going to go into how each character works because I'll just be repeating myself. The only quote-unquote new enemy is Chloe, who wasn't in the first game. She just appears as a hallucination and doesn't do anything. In all seriousness, there are a few noticeable differences between the remake and the original. This time you can actually see the oxygen meter, so it'll let you know how long you have before you need to take the mask off. The cameras scroll this time instead of just staying completely still. The most noteworthy difference though is the game's story. It is completely different to the original. The phone guy is Ryan instead of Chloe.
Hello? Hey dude, my name is Ryan, and I'm the new daytime security guard. I want to give you a call to let you know what you need to do at night, man. Like, it's always hard on the first night, getting used to things and all that. So I'm just gonna read this message the dudes at Fazbear Entertainment wanted me to read to you, so, here we go, man.
At the end of each night you get a minigame. In each minigame you play as a green guy. No, not that green guy. You go around the pizzeria sabotaging the animatronics. On night 1 it's Toy Bonnie, on night 2 it's Toy Freddy, on night 3 it's Toy Chica, and on night 4 it's Golden Toy Freddy. In the night 3 phone call, Ryan mentions that it was rumored that the previous day shift worker was killed, who is implying to have been Chloe.
They see that black figure of a woman or something, which is weird as the previous day guard before me was a woman too. I'm not saying she died, don't worry, but no one has actually seen her since the last time she came to work.
Then in the night 4 phone call, Ryan reveals that he has actually been evil the whole time and programmed the animatronics to kill.
All I usually hear is a whisper saying, "You did this to me." I mean, like, why? Why me? What did I do? It's not like I'm a murderer or anything. Surely no one would think I would murder someone, correct? I mean, I didn't murder her myself. I reprogrammed the old Golden Toy Freddy animatronic to finish the job for me. So technically, I wasn't the one who did it. Or maybe it's me.
So the green guy is actually Ryan, who in the minigames is reprogramming the animatronics to kill people. In the night 5 phone call, Ryan locks you in the pizzeria because he is concerned that you'll tell the police that he is a murderer.
After our chat yesterday, I don't think I could possibly let you out. You might contact the police. So tonight I decided to lock all the doors.
Why did he just tell you about his crimes for seemingly no reason? It's a bit of a dick move. When you beat night 5, it tells you that you've got to survive another night because Ryan locked you in. You access night 6 by typing ready for remake. In the night 6 phone call, Ryan is ready to go on the run as he will soon be wanted by the police.
I'm leaving tonight. In fact, I'm packed up and ready to go. This is the last thing I need to do before I go on the run. You know, I was sort of fond of you. So gullible. You kept coming back. But now look where you are. Trapped. Anyway, you know that new technology they installed? I made sure that they all malfunction, so they have to get rid of it and bring back the old tech. So the next night guard after you will suffer, and those who come after him too, just like I had to suffer about 6 years ago. Don't worry, I made sure it malfunctions after you leave. I'm a nice guy, aren't I? Well, this will be the last time we talk. Goodbye.
So it seems that Ryan used to be a night guard and went mentally insane from being hunted down by the animatronics who tried to stuff him into a suit and wanted to get revenge on the company by tampering with the animatronics and programming them to kill. That's actually an interesting idea for a FNaF villain. After you beat night 6, you quit your job and a pizzeria closes down shortly afterwards, and the murderer of Chloe is still out there. So that's Five Nights at Toy Freddy's remake. Aside from the story, there's really nothing that separates this remake from the original. It is better than the original, but that means absolutely nothing. In spite of that though, I think I actually get why this was made. Despite being a remake, this game actually might be canon to the first 3. It feels like it takes place in between the first and second game. If that's so, then it makes sense as for why this is the same as the first game, because it's the same location with the same animatronics. Although I think it would have worked better to just make a post expanding the lore. It felt unnecessary to rehash the first game just to add more lore to the series. I could be wrong, maybe this isn't canon to the first game, but if that's the case, then it has even less of a purpose existing. Just make a post saying that the story has been retconned. I don't know, maybe RickyG wanted to put this in a game to reach a wider audience than what a GameDrop post would. Well, that didn't even work because no one played the game when it came out. Before we continue, I'd like to ask you a quick question. Have you ever made a FNaF fan game in GameMaker? Did you ever watch a tutorial on YouTube that explains how you make one? Well, RickyG might have made that video that you saw. He made a well-known series on his channel where he explains how you make a FNaF fan game in GameMaker. There's a FNaF fan game that RickyG made with the purpose of showing you how to make a FNaF fan game, One Night at Green Toy Freddy's. It was released on the 16th of May 2015. Its entire development was documented in a 4-part video. It's nothing remarkable as the game was just made with the intention on educating upcoming FNaF fan game developers on how to use GameMaker. The game opens with a news article which has a very high quality image of Toy Freddy on it. It's just a generic RickyG premise. An old pizzeria was found and is being reopened. As the name would suggest, the game only contains one night. It takes place in a FNAF 1 location. You have 3 cameras and a monitor and a green mask to wear. At 5 AM, green toy Freddy will appear at your left doorway and you have to wear the mask. When you beat the night, you just get the most 2015 phrases ever on your screen. I don't think I really need to go into this game very much. It was just made as a game maker tutorial and it can be beaten in 3 minutes. Let's just move on. Now we're going to be taking a look at RickyG's most well-known FNAF fan game. If you've never heard of the game before, you've probably seen the character that originates from it. That game is 5 Decaying Nights. The game was released on the 23rd of May 2015. It opens with a cutscene where you're in a dining room in FNAF 1. Then a group of red eyes appear in the dark. When you click new game, you get a news article saying a horror attraction is opening, named Freddy Fazbear Horror, based off the Freddy Fazbear's pizza chain from the 70s to 90s. A new Frankenstein animatronic has been added to the attraction, named Perish. Perish is his endoskeleton with a head of Withered Freddy, Withered Bonnie, Withered Chica, Balloon Boy, Springtrap and Phantom Foxy. He has a really cool design, although he does look a bit awkward in a lot of camera renders since he was made with Photoshop and is massive. The camera map is fucking huge. There's 17 cameras in total. It is a combined map of the FNAF 1, 2 and 3 map. Surprisingly, they don't clash with each other and they actually work well as one big location. This is actually supposed to be part of the attraction that are based off each location. The office is a FNAF 2 office, but the lights are flickering. It has creepy music playing in the background. It doesn't make the place feel the same way as how it does in FNAF 1 through 3, but I think it does add suspense. The biggest problem is that Perish is the only enemy in the whole game. There is one other enemy and that's Golden Freddy, who's just a yellow recolor of Freddy from FNAF 1. He's just a hallucination who can appear in the cameras. If you stare at him for too long, he will jump scare you, but that does fuck all. Perish has 3 methods of attacking, but it requires you to do the same thing, wear the mask. However, wearing the mask is not what repels him, it's a music box that plays when you wear the mask. The music box has power which goes down when you wear the mask. The power won't go up at all, so only wear the mask when you need to. He'll appear in the office or the office hallway. When you see him, you have to wear the mask and wait for him to leave. When he leaves, you will also hear him. If he's in cam 1, you also have to wear the mask. You'll only know that he's gone if you hear him. If you don't look at the camera for too long, he will kill you. However, out of the 17 cameras in the map, you only need to watch one camera, and that's cam 1. You just need to keep checking out one camera and wait for Perish to attack. And yes, his AI is once again determined by how often you view the cameras. Unlike some of RickyG's previous games, you can easily play the game properly if you want to, which is by watching Perish in the cameras consistently. But even then, it's the same thing on every night, so it gets boring quickly. I bet you're interested to find out about the lore of the game that gave us a Frank and Freddy animatronic. It's nothing special. The phone guy is named Mitchell Smith, who is the owner of the attraction, and the person you play as is named Archie. Perish is designed to walk around the attraction both during the day and night. He hides in the shadows and jumps out at guests to scare them. There's also a minigame that you get at the end of each night. The minigames are called Perish's Adventure. You play as Perish. In the first 2 minigames, he is chasing this man around the attraction. In the night 3 minigame, they're in a room with Golden Freddy. Then Perish goes up to the man and kills him. In the night 4 minigame, Perish is seen hiding the body. Yeah, Perish is a straight up murderer, not just a machine that malfunctioned. In the night 4 phone call, Mitchell reports that a patron went missing.
There was an accident today. One of the patrons, an 18-year-old, went missing inside the attraction. We looked everywhere, we haven't found him. Please let us know if you find him. If you don't, we'll have to continue looking for him tomorrow. His parents are really worried.
In the night 5 phone call, Mitchell informs you that they're going to have to close the place down after they found a dead body. And he really sounds like he just found out that someone died at his establishment.
We are closing tomorrow. We found the boy. He's dead. He was in the vents. Did you notice the foul smell last night? We smelled it this morning, and that's when we found him. Perish has been deemed too dangerous for the public. We're closing tomorrow and you're getting rid of it. It's been nice having you. We'll send a paycheck to you sometime next week.
Corporate scum. Every once in a while you get these Golden Freddy hallucinations that says I am not to blame, which I don't really understand. Maybe it means that Golden Freddy didn't kill anyone, but it was never implied that he did. When you beat Night 5, it tells you that Perish has been scrapped after he killed an 18-year-old at the horror attraction, which is being closed down. However, they plan on opening a new horror attraction after they found the remnants of the toy animatronics, which are used to create Toy Perish, who is going to be the main enemy in 5 Decaying Nights 2, which was cancelled seemingly early on in development for unknown reasons. So that's the end of 5 Decaying Nights. Despite this being RickyG's most well-known game, I really don't have much to say about it. It's such a boring game that certainly had potential, but it failed in its execution. I don't think it's controversial to say that Perish is the only reason why this game was so popular. The next game RickyG made was Five Nights at Freddy's 2 Game Maker Edition Revenge. It was released on the 15th of June 2015. It takes place 2 years after the third game. The second game's location, which was left abandoned, is being renovated into a new horror attraction. As you may have guessed by the title, this is like The Return, but it's at the FNaF 2 location instead of the FNaF 1 location. So this game is very unique because it actually has no cameras. You instead have motion sensors located in each room, which are seen on the map. You can't actually see what's inside these rooms. When someone is in a room, it will say that there is activity in the room. The left and right vents and office entrance will lead to your office. The enemies active are the Nightmare toy animatronics, which include Freddy, Bonnie and Chica, as well as a Nightmare puppet. If any of them appear in your office, you have to go to the monitor and restart whoever's in your office. As a reminder, this game came out 1 month before FNaF 4. The toy animatronics look like withered toy animatronics with red eyes, sharp teeth and claws. Chica has a hook instead of Foxy, who is absent. I do respect the ambition, but it don't really look that scary, especially compared to Nightmare Freddy in The Return. I get that we didn't have much to go off by, as at this point we only saw the heads of the Nightmare animatronics. Nightmare Toy Bonnie definitely looks better than the other two, because he looks more nightmarish and distinct from the original Toy Bonnie. Nightmare Puppet is the best character. He is very intimidating with those teeth and has chainsaws for hands, although the bottom half doesn't really work. So yeah, this game has some out there ideas for the time. However though, as you can imagine, it's not as good as it sounds. The thing is with this game is that the motion sensors aren't mandatory. You can just wait for someone to appear in your office. With there being no cameras though, the animatronics AI is very smooth and they're actually very aggressive on later nights, but they're just so easily dealt with. Just pull up the monitor and restart whichever animatronic is in the office by simply clicking a button. Although I will say, this game can be intense, as you have to stay alert at all times. Also, I really like the ambience used. Now let's talk about the lore. The character you play as is named Matt. On each night you get a phone call. The phone guy is once again voiced by RickyG. The company is very shady in this game. The phone guy knows that the animatronics are murderous, but doesn't tell you. Or well, he doesn't mean to at least.
Hiya, Matt. Glad to see you came back for another night. No one would want to work somewhere there's a high chance of a brutal death. Never mind.
Then on the night 4 phone call, it is revealed that the puppet killed an employee and they didn't report it and just hid the body in a parts and service.
He was working on the puppet, but then the puppet got activated and then its chainsaws. None of his family lives nearby, so they don't know that he was killed. We don't know what to do with the body. We just put it in parts and service for now. I know it sounds bad, but we really want this place to open, and this accident could ruin all of it. But besides that, everything else should be the same. Good luck.
At the end of night 4, the motion sensors break, and on night 5, you can't use them. Which doesn't really mean anything, since like I said, you don't need them, but kudos for trying to change things up on the final night. On the night 5 phone call, you are told that the pizzeria is not opening out of fear that the animatronics might attack a guest.
We can't open this place. We just can't. The animatronics, they've been really aggressive lately. It makes no sense. I just don't know what to do. We're afraid that they'll malfunction, and I don't know.
When you beat night 5, you get a mini game which is on a Game Boy Pocket. You play as a ghost child who has 2 paths. One leads to the puppet and the other leads to a balloon. If you go to the puppet, you possess it and get the bad ending. If you get the bad ending, you won't unlock night 6. You just have to replay night 5 though. If you go to the balloon, you get the good ending. Basically, you're given the choice to free the souls of dead children or keep them trapped. So night 6 is actually a custom night. Well, kinda. You get to decide who's active and who isn't, but you can't customize the difficulty. You get a phone call on the custom night, meaning that it is canon. Nothing happens when you beat the custom night. So that's the end of Five Nights at Freddy's 2 Game Maker Edition Revenge. This certainly has some interesting ideas for a pre-FNaF 4 fan game, with there being motion sensors that work differently to 5 Golden Nights at Freddy's, and it changed the strategy on night 5. Once again though, it doesn't really do much with these ideas. It suffers from being way too easy, like I don't think I even died once when playing it. But at least you can actually still play this game as intended 10 years later, and despite being easy, it's not particularly boring. It's still not a good game, but it's better than all the other FNaF fan games it RickyG had made at this point. Before FNaF Game Maker Edition The Return and Revenge was released, there was going to be a game called FNaF Game Maker Edition The Beginning. This game got cancelled and we know literally nothing about it, but it was probably related to The Return and Revenge. Next we're going to be talking about the final installment of the Five Nights at Toy Freddy series. This had been teased since Five Nights at Toy Freddy's remake, that being Five Nights at Toy Freddy's 4. The game was released on the 5th of July 2015. It received an update 6 days later. If you've seen the Lost FNaF Fangames iceberg I did a while back, you might remember that I reported this game as being lost. However, since that video came out, the game was found by Frankie Beppers on the 9th of July 2025. The first version of the game has also been found by Danko Mima. The menu shows 2 Toy Freddys and flames burning, giving you the sense this really is the final chapter. Have a guess what the premise of this game is. Yep, an old pizzeria is being converted into a new one. This one is called Freddy's Pizza Party Palace. This game looks similar to Five Nights at Toy Freddy's 3. It does look a lot better as there's more props and the colour isn't as unappealing, but still just looks like sandpaper. This game has somewhat of a free roam aspect to it. There's 3 rooms that you can be in: the office, the hallway and the power room, which has a power generator you have to keep charging up. I wouldn't consider this the first point and click free roam FNaF fan game though, because it's not really utilised and it's basically just a generator mechanic from FNAF 2, just with 1 extra room. Speaking of FNAF 2, that's basically what this game is. If someone appears in the office, you have to hide in the hallway and not touch a generator. There's only 2 enemies active and they are once again manipulated by viewing the camera, which is completely useless by the way. So what's stopping you from just charging the generator the whole time? Nothing. You can literally just do that the whole game. Yep, that's what this epic finale that has been built up for 2 months is. Charge a generator simulator. The 2 enemies that are active are Toy Freddy and Old Freddy. Old Freddy is just a withered Toy Freddy. They both do the exact same thing. If you were to play the game properly though, they'll appear from the right hallway. No one will ever appear from the central hallway, it's just there for decoration. When you see them, you have to hide in the hallway and wait for them to leave. You'll hear them when they leave. Toy Bonnie and Toy Chica are in the game, but they serve as phantoms who just jump scare you and don't kill you. They'll appear in a hallway occasionally and you just have to go to another room to avoid them. So the highlights of this series, and by highlights I mean the only half decent thing about them, is a story. So what's it like in this final installment? I don't really have anything to say about the phone calls, other than the fact that they're so quiet that when I went back to listen to them, I had to turn the volume up by 300%. The only other noteworthy thing is that RickyG lowered the pitch of his voice to make him sound older.
Hi, my name is Richard, and I'm one of the people who discovered this place. I know the job may seem sort of confusing at first, but don't worry, it's actually not that bad.
You get a mini-game at the end of each night called The Chase. You play as a ghost who is chasing Ryan around a maze. In the Night 4 minigame, Ryan is dead in a bloody mess. When you touch him, the minigame ends. When you beat Night 5, you get a paycheck which reveals that you play as Jack Cook, and that the game takes place on the 10th of January. It doesn't say the year though. There isn't a Night 6 this time, so Night 5 was a final night in the series. When you beat Night 5, you unlock a text document that explains the entire lore of the Five Nights at Toy Freddy series. Something that I'd like to mention is that it's never actually stated what Ryan's real name is. It is implied in the remake that he might have faked his identity, and in this game he's just referred to as the killer. But I'm just going to call him Ryan because it's easier. The story begins shortly after the events of FNAF 2 in the late 80s. Ryan targeted a sister location of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. He reprogrammed the animatronics to kill kids. Following an incident where a child died, the animatronics were later replaced. Ryan then sabotaged those animatronics, but this time he made it so they can kill adults as well. Chloe worked as a day shift but stayed at the pizzeria a bit later one night as she forgot to record a message for the night guard, Mike Schmidt. While recording this message, she was killed by one of the animatronics as heard in the Night 5 phone call. Afterwards, Mike quit his job and Ryan was made head security guard. 22 years later, 2 teenagers, Dan and Peter, dared their friend Richard to spend 5 nights at the abandoned Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, which had been left abandoned for roughly 16 years, assuming that the remake is still canon. Richard was killed and stuffed into a Freddy suit. A few years later, Fazbear's Fright opened but burnt down shortly after opening. The surviving animatronics were brought by Gerald Smith, who put them in a museum called Fazbear's Revenge. The museum later closed after a dead body was found in the Spring Bonnie suit. Then the abandoned pizzeria was rediscovered and refurbished. However, the ghost of the murdered child still haunted the place and controls the animatronics. The ghost finds Ryan and chases him down. Ryan then goes insane and commits suicide. After he dies, the soul of the murdered child and Chloe were free. The pizzeria opened with no incidents and was free from being haunted. So that's the end of the final chapter to this series. It's really bad, I don't think I really need to repeat myself. It's an exploitable game that even without exploits doesn't have any challenge to it. I would say that it's a disappointing conclusion, but not really when this was the standards for the whole series. I do like that it explains the lore of the series at the end though, that was very rare for a FNaF fan game at the time. The story is really nothing remarkable though, and it's anticlimactic. I do have an interesting theory about these games though. What if Five Nights at Freddy's and FNaF Game Maker Edition are canon to each other? Just because they have different art styles doesn't mean that they can't be in the same universe. It has been confirmed that the storyline of FNaF, as at the time these games were made, is canon to Five Nights at Freddy's. And I couldn't find any contradictions to suggest that these games aren't canon to each other. Like, you don't even play as Mike Schmidt in FNaF 1 Game Maker Edition, it's Floyd Cook. Also, the night guard he plays in Five Nights at Freddy's 4 is named Jack Cook. This could just be a reference to FNaF Game Maker Edition, or he is the son or grandson of Floyd Cook. The fact that they aren't mentioned in the lore doc means that RickyG probably didn't intend on these games being linked, but it was never explicitly stated that they aren't canon to each other, so it is a possibility. And that's the end of the Five Nights at Freddy's series. I've made it very clear that these games are all awful, but they really do have a special place in FNaF history. This is one of the first popular FNaF fan game series, and it helped pave the way for so much more FNaF fan games to come out, which were much better. And even if these games are all incredibly dated products of their times, it's kinda sad how no one remembers them anymore. Unlike the returns of Freddy's or Five Nights at Wario's, which have gained a massive cult following. Even Five Nights at Thomas's is remembered fondly as a nostalgic piece of FNaF fan game history, even if the games are terrible. Five Nights at Freddy's is a FNaF fan game series that really has been left in the dust, and it seems like very few have thought about it since it ended. I can totally see why these games were impressive when they first dropped in February 2015, but by the time FNaF 3 came out, they were just steamrolled by far superior FNaF fan games. And just like that, what was once one of the most popular FNaF fan game series became forgotten. So that marks the end of RickyG's most popular FNaF fan game series. Moving on, we're going to be talking about a very interesting FNaF fan game from RickyG. This is a very well-known FNaF fan game that was complete, but never released. That game is Two Nights at Toy Bonnie's. You probably don't remember this game, don't you? Well, did you ever watch the other Game Maker tutorial that RickyG made, which explains how you make a FNaF fan game in one video with no commentary? Well, this was a game that he was making in that video. The video also shows a folder with quite a lot of unreleased games, those being the following: Five Nights at TF2, Five Nights at MLG Freddy's, FNaF Game Maker Edition 3D, FNaF 3 Top Down, Infinite Nights at Jedwolf's, 3 Nights at School, Five Nights at Luigi Kids, 3 Nights at Jerry's, Alfie's FNaF 3, and FNaF Game Maker Edition The Beginning. Who knows if a playable build ever existed for these games, or if they were just concepts. Two Nights at Toy Bonnie's has an office from Five Nights to Destroy. Most of the cameras are from FNaF 1, but one has the same textures from Five Nights at Freddy's 4. If Toy Bonnie enters the office, you have to turn off the power. There probably wasn't much else to the game since it was made solely for the purpose of a tutorial, like One Night at Green Toy Freddy's. Two Nights at Toy Bonnie's was actually supposed to get released, as there is a disclaimer at the end of the game saying that it was made for a Game Maker tutorial, which explains why it's so underwhelming. However, there is no evidence to suggest that this game was ever released, so RickyG might have not released it last minute after realizing that it doesn't need to be released. Another possible reason is because the tutorial was published on the 21st of July 2015, and you all know what happened 2 days after this video was published. The second most anticipated video game of 2015, with only beaten by its predecessor, was released: Five Nights at Freddy's 4. Which could have made RickyG forget about this game because holy shit, a new FNaF game came out. And shortly after FNaF 4 came out, RickyG began working on a new FNaF fan game, Five Nights at Freddy's 4 Game Maker Edition. It was released on the 5th of August 2015. This wasn't the first FNaF 4 fan game, there were quite a few that came before this one. But this might have been the first attempt at recreating FNaF 4's gameplay. Well, sorta. You're in the bedroom and have to run over to the doors and closets to check if someone's there. However, it removes the most fundamental part of FNaF 4, the breathing mechanic, as a flashlight is absent. When Bonnie or Chica are at your door, you'll always see their eyes and have to close the door. After decompiling the files, I found that there was supposed to be a breathing mechanic in the game, as Nightmare Bonnie and Chica do have jump scares from the door and the breathing sound is in the files. However, it's not in the full game, likely because it would have been too complicated for RickyG to program. Freddy acts the same, you just look behind you every once in a while and shine a light at the Freddles. Foxy becomes active on night 2 and he went from being the biggest threat in the game to the smallest. In this game, he never attacks from the hallway and will appear in a closet every now and then. What makes him so easy though is that you'll always know when he's in the closet because you'll hear him singing when he gets in. It does suck that you can't see the hallways, but the bedroom is a solid recreation of the FNAF 4 bedroom. The Nightmare animatronics look alright as well. Nightmare Freddy obviously looks nothing like how he did in The Return. Now, I think FNAF 4 has possibly the scariest ambience of any FNAF related media, and it's pretty much guaranteed to add tension to any game that it's in. And that's very much the case here. However, this is just FNAF 4 but worse in every way possible. Without the breathing mechanical Foxy attacking in the hallways, you have a pretty easy game. The animatronics don't make any noise when they leave, besides Foxy who stops singing, so you have to hold the door shut for about 8 seconds. As you'd probably imagine, fun with Plush Up is not in the game. It was going to be, but it got scrapped. Probably because it doesn't serve a purpose given how easy this game is, or is too difficult to add into the game. Now, I'm sure you're all wondering, does this game follow the story of FNAF 4? Well, no, it doesn't. However, it is loosely inspired by it. At the end of each night, you get a cutscene of the show stage at Fredbear's family diner. The Night 1 cutscene shows Fredbear and Spring Bonnie performing to the children. The Night 2 cutscene shows the stage after dark. Towards the end, someone walks in. In the Night 3 cutscene, there is now a Fredbear plush on the floor who opens its eyes. In the Night 4 cutscene, it shows a distressed child next to the animatronics. This kid is possibly the character who you play as. It still hasn't actually been confirmed who you play as in FNAF 4. It's generally agreed upon that it's a big brother who was having nightmares after he got his brother killed. However, during 2015, most people thought that he played as a bite victim. In this game, it's never hinted at anywhere, so it could be anyone really. The cutscenes are most likely not chronologically linked to the main nights. It still has a countdown to the party at the start of each night though, so the birthday party is still canon. Anyway, let's talk about Night 5, which still has Nightmare Fredbear, who is far less of an imposing threat as he was in the original. Which is unfortunate because he could have been perfectly recreated in this game. But no, his AI is just nowhere near aggressive enough, and he can't attack from the bed this time, so whenever he laughs, you'll always know he's in the closet. With the story being very vague this time, he also lacks the build-up that made this boss fight so iconic in the original game. It's fine I guess, but it's a bit lackluster, and yes, it is easier than Night 3 and 4. In the Night 5 cutscene, Fredbear has blood in his mouth, and there is a police tape implying that the bite of 83 just happened. Or maybe it's a bite of 87, since some people did believe that at the time.
Was that the bite of 87?
In the background, you can hear police sirens and someone is crying, in what is quite an eerie cutscene, not gonna lie. Then, you get the bad ending. That's right, this game actually has multiple endings. You can't progress any further until you get the good ending, and you have to replay the whole game again to get the good ending. So, how do you unlock it? There is a cupcake in the Night 1 through 4 cutscene and you have to click on it every time. Yeah, that's it, that's how you get this alternative ending. You get the exact same cutscene on Night 5 regardless on your actions. This is just so unnecessary and it really feels forced since quite a few people were disappointed that FNAF 4 only had one ending. Maybe that's what made RickyG add this to the game, but this would have confused the shit out of people if it was in the original game. After getting the good ending, you unlock the extras, where you can play Night 6. It plays out the same as Night 6 in FNAF 4, where at 4 AM everyone deactivates and Nightmare Fredbear takes over. When you beat Night 6, you get an image of the kid crying that says, "The End." Then you unlock Night 7. Sadly, Nightmare is not in the game. When you beat it, you get a thank you message which has all the FNAF Game Maker Edition characters, similar to the thank you image that Scott made. So that's the end of FNAF 4 Game Maker Edition. This game is actually not that bad to be honest. Yeah, it's very easy and gets boring towards the end, and it didn't need a Night 7, but it's actually fairly enjoyable. It's still a shittier version of a game that I really like, and it doesn't have any bugs, so it's hard for me to dislike it. That being said, the only reason to play this game is either too scared to play FNAF 4, or if you just want to play it for the sake of it. This was actually intended on being RickyG's last FNAF fan game. What's really funny though is that RickyG said that this will be his last FNAF fan game until the FNAF movie comes out. Little did we know that that wouldn't be until 8 years. This statement also aged poorly in another way, because RickyG did eventually release another FNAF fan game after seemingly quitting. After 3 whole days, he released another FNAF fan game. Yes, he went back on his word just a couple of days later. Have you ever seen that video that shows FNAF 4's gameplay mechanics being remade in Game Maker? Well, did you know that video was made by RickyG? If so, did you know that this was actually a game that he released 5 days before the video came out? On the 8th of August 2015, on FNAF 1's first anniversary, One Long Nightmare was released. Like I said, this was made to test if you can recreate all the mechanisms in FNAF 4. It was made in 11 hours, so you can imagine this game doesn't have much to it. Well, get this. This is actually the best RickyG game of 2015. Okay, now I know that is not a statement at all, as an okay game would be his best FNAF fan game. First off, this is a very smooth recreation of FNAF 4. The frame rate is on point and it shows that FNAF 4 can definitely be remade in Game Maker. Since the game is called One Long Nightmare, it has 3 nights. Each night has its own name. Let's first talk about Fredbear Fever. This has Nightmare Fredbear, and at 4 AM he becomes Nightmare. He acts very similar to how he acts in FNAF 4. He will run to either the left or right door and you have to close whichever one he is at. Occasionally he can appear in your bed or the closet. This is basically night 5 in FNAF 4, but it gets harder at 4 AM. It can also be quite rage-inducing because Nightmare can trick you into thinking that he is at a different door to the one he is actually at. This does a good job at capturing the feel that night 5 has in FNAF 1, and it's about as intense. It can be a bit unfair at times, but it's definitely beatable. There is one noticeable difference that this has to FNAF 4, and this is an issue that I have with the other nights as well. Each night is completely scripted. If you play them enough times, you can memorize precisely where the animatronics will attack from. The next night is Terrifying Toys, and yes, this is what it sounds like.
Toy animatronics in FNAF 4!
Toy Bonnie and Toy Chica to be exact. Toy Chica attacks from the left door and Toy Bonnie attacks from the right door. You just have to close the door on them, neither can attack from the bed or the closet. Besides just being a lot easier, it's not scripted in the same way as Fredbear Fever. And lastly, you have Rage Quit, which at first I thought was just a quit button, so you can imagine my reaction when I found this was actually a night. There is only one enemy active, and that is Scott Cawthon, or Anim Dude. He can only attack from the left or right door. Despite being called Rage Quit, this is actually the easiest night in the game. When you beat Rage Quit, you get a key with text that reads, "Some things are best left forgotten until you find a way to open it." This is just a reference to the box in FNAF 4. That's basically all there is to One Long Nightmare. Sure, there's not really a whole lot to it, and it should have been ordered the other way around so it would have actually had difficulty progression, but I still think it's a fun and intense game, which is something that I can't really say about RickyG's other games. I get that some people might not care for this game as much, since it has no story whatsoever, and it's basically just a FNAF 4 copy with the toy animatronics, and I can totally see why very few people played it when it came out, but this is actually a decent game. Although, we've got to remember this was only made as a test, and really the only reason it is an okay game is because it just copied FNAF 4. So it wouldn't be fair to expect the rest of his games to be good. Okay, the next game we're going to be talking about is Five Nights at Illuminati's 2. Yeah, the sequel actually did get made. One thing that's interesting about it is that we actually don't know when Five Nights at Illuminati's 2 was released. There are no videos of the game and no archive of its game drop page. It probably came out in August 2015 though, judging by its gameplay. Okay, so let's not judge a book by its cover. Maybe it isn't as diabolical as the first game. You play as Shrek, who used to work for the Illuminatis before quitting his job. He used the money he earned to buy a mansion. However, he is mentally scarred from his job and has nightmares about the Illuminatis, so I guess you play as Shrek in the first game. Right off the bat, this looks way better than the first game. Now yes, you can clearly tell these are just Photoshop rooms, but I'll take that over a grey wall. So, the first 3 nights actually take place in a different location to each other. The first 2 nights take place in Shrek's mansion, however they take place in different rooms. This does not affect the gameplay though, it's the same thing on every night. You have a flashlight that can look around the room, you can look behind you as well as in front of you. If you see the Illuminati, you have to close your eyes whilst looking at it. The normal Illuminati is the only enemy in the game. He will appear in a room somewhere, either in front of you or behind you. When he attacks, you'll hear him. Yep, that's the game. It sounds like a pushover, doesn't it? Well, not really, because he will kill you very quickly. To the point where you'll die if you don't immediately cover your eyes. However, he'll always show up in one of 2 places on each side. Both places are quite close to each other, so if you hear him but can't see him, just turn around and close your eyes right away. This is better than the first game, but so is Fazbear Return 1. Okay, there are a few things that I do actually like about this game. I quite like the ambience used. I think it had the potential to be an intense game, but not much really happens. I don't exactly expect the game where you play as Shrek and are being hunted down by Illuminatis to be scary, but this does kinda work. At the start of Night 3, you're informed that Shrek was kicked out of his house by the Men in Black because he's not financially stable anymore. So he has to move back into his swamp. Night 3 and 4 take place at Shrek's swamp. On Night 4, Shrek wants to take down the Illuminatis once and for all. So, what happens in this epic boss fight? Fuck all. It's just a harder Night 3. Okay, well that's not completely true, because unlike Night 3, Night 4 is impossible. At 5 AM, the Illuminati will attack from both sides at the same time, which makes it so that you can't deal with them, so you'll always get killed. I decompiled the game and found out what happens after you beat Night 4. On Night 5, Shrek burns down the swamp to kill all the Illuminatis. And that's the end of Five Nights at Illuminatis 2. It's not the worst thing ever, unlike the first game. I think it could have worked if they made it so that you had more time to check the Illuminati, but they could have also made it so that it's harder to spot them. And I do like the idea of each night taking place in a different location. That was definitely very rare for a FNaF fan game at the time, but did nothing with it. As it is, it's just a mediocre FNaF fan game that could have been worse, but it could have been better too. The next FNaF fan game that RickyG released was very different to his previous games for quite a few reasons. Next up, we're going to be talking about Five Nights at Billy Bob's. It was released on the 23rd of August 2015. The biggest change is that this game was actually made entirely out of original 3D models, and it has a completely original character, Billy Bob, who is a human animatronic who wears a green shirt, a top hat, and has a really fat round head. Not really the intimidating type, but it looks alright considering how this is RickyG's first model. One thing that hasn't changed is a cliche premise of reopening an abandoned restaurant into something new. For some reason, this game has currency. At the start of each night, it tells you how much money you've earned. You get $3.90 when you beat each night. You can't do anything with this money though, it just exists. So this is a FNaF 4 inspired game. You have no cameras and have to see if someone's coming by looking down a hallway. As you've probably noticed, the office and hallway look bland. There's nothing there, just black and red walls. This has a FNaF 4 ambience, which like I said is kinda cheating because it just always gives me chills whenever I hear it. The office does feel dark and claustrophobic, despite not really having anything except the Billy Bob poster, so I guess it's not just the ambience. The gameplay is rather shite, as you can imagine. It does a breathing mechanic, but just a sound cue to let you know that Billy Bob is in the hallway, and I can't imagine this gumble ass looking motherfucker making such an ominous sound. Anyway though, you can just keep shining a light in the hallway and nothing happens, despite what the phone guy says.
But if you shine your flashlight when it isn't there, somehow the animatronic's gonna sense it or something, and he'll be in your office in a few seconds. And we don't know what he does when that happens.
There is one thing keeping you from just shining a light at the hallway the whole night, and that is charging the power, which you have to be in the office to do so. It doesn't really hinder you much though. Billy Bob's AI is still sluggish as fuck, so you'll never be in a position where you think, oh shit, I might be dead. Let's talk about the phone calls now. So the phone guy doesn't try to hide the fact that you could get killed.
My name's Eric, and I'll be leaving some pre-recorded messages for you every night to help you with your new job. First off, I'm just going to be completely honest and say this was a terrible career choice. You see, I actually worked in your position before you, and trust me, it was terrifying. Normally I would say good job or something like that, but since this is a pre-recorded message, I can't actually tell if you did good or not. I actually can't even tell if you're still alive. I could be talking to a dead guy right now.
On night 3, they tried to fix a generator, but have a guess what happened.
We managed to make it worse.
In night 4, the phone guy tells you that a child was killed and stuffed into an older Billy Bob suit.
So I thought I'd take the opportunity tonight to tell you about the incident that happened a few years ago that got this place shut down originally. Supposedly, someone snuck into the building at night. We didn't have a security guard back then. And apparently he had a dead child with him. And he stuffed that dead child into the Billy Bob animatronic.
And then he fucking dies.
Billy Bob's gonna get extremely aggressive, so you'll want to be absolutely careful.
On night 5, Shadow Billy Bob, who's just a dark purple Billy Bob, takes over, and is somehow even less aggressive than normal Billy Bob. I don't know if he's bugged, but he literally only attacked once the whole night. After you beat night 5, you get a news article saying that Billy Bob's closed down after someone broke in and destroyed the Billy Bob animatronic, and that the pizzeria might never reopen. You also get a paycheck that reveals that you play as Dave A. Kinney, and that the game takes place on the 21st of February 2001. Afterwards, you unlock the extras, which shows an early version of The Office and a link to a poll that has since been deleted. There isn't a night 6. So that's Five Nights at Billy Bob's. I do commend RickyG for actually making a FNaF fan game with original 3D models after spending so long making them by either drawing them or reusing assets. But the game is pretty terrible. It's a boring game where nothing really happens and there's just one enemy on every night and they're dealt with so easily. However, this was not the end of Five Nights at Billy Bob's because the game got a sequel, Five Nights at Billy Bob's 2. It was released on the 26th of August 2015. That's right, this sequel came out a mere 3 days after the first game. That is not a good look. However though, this game actually starts off promising. This is a prequel to the first game. It takes place on the 8th of June 1996. It opens with a minigame where you play as a child who is at Billy Bob's. There is a man who tries to get the kid to go into the employees only room. When you go over to him, he pulls out a knife and kills you. Then you wake up in this purgatory realm full of grey empty hallways. The kid thinks that he might be dreaming. Then night 1 begins. Pretty awesome way to start a FNaF fan game. You get killed right at the beginning and end up in some other dimension. The atmosphere in the minigame is very well done. So, what are the main nights like? You play as a kid that you play as in the minigames. You're in this empty room with an equally empty hallway on your left and right. The left hallway has a Billy Bob gumball machine, but that's really it. I'm pretty sure this was reusing an older office from the first game, as the extras menu of the first game shows an unused office which looks similar to this one, and given how shortly afterwards this game came out after the first one, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if the hallways and gameplay were also repurposed from an older version. Oh wait, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Withered Billy Bob is the enemy in this game. His name is self-explanatory, he's just a withered and darker coloured Billy Bob. He looks better than how he looked in the first game and fits the vibe more, but I just don't find this design intimidating, I'm sorry. He will appear in one of the hallways. If you see him in a hallway, you have to shine a light directly at him, and yeah, that's the first 3 nights. Okay, this is a lot better than the first game. Billy Bob does serve as an effective antagonist. He actually is aggressive even on night 1, so you have to be checking the hallways constantly. It's still too easy and monotonous though. There was later an update which added a generator mechanism, similar to the first game. You can only charge it while in the office by holding control. It doesn't really make the game much harder though, it just makes it so that you can only play the game with one hand, something you're supposed to do anyway. After each night you get a minigame which shows a kid getting increasingly more worried as he spends more time here, and I will say, these minigames live up to the first one. There's just a really gloomy feel to them combined with the dialogue, and I actually think the main nights fit the vibe of the minigames. On night 4, a new enemy is introduced who replaces Billy Bob, that being Withered Shadow Billy Bob. He attacks so much quicker and you have to hold the flashlight on him until he leaves. His kill timer won't actually reset if you shine a light on him, so you can quite easily get killed by him if you wind up the generator at a bad time. He moves faster as the night goes on. At 3 AM he will basically attack again right after leaving, giving you no time to wind up the generator. Yes, the generator serves a purpose, but it makes the game more tedious. Another reason is because he will kill you instantly if you leave the hallway that he is in. That doesn't sound too bad, but it's very common that you'll leave at the exact time he attacks. I will say though, I'll take a game that is luck based over one that just straight up doesn't work. Luckily the first version is still playable and I much prefer it. Shadow Billy Bob does make for an intense threat, because you'll never know if you're going to get killed by him when you return to the office. Night 5 has both Billy Bob and Shadow Billy Bob. This night is honestly easier than night 4 because Shadow Billy Bob is a lot less active. Like all of RickyG's previous games, this is once again scripted, so you can predict where they'll attack from and in what order. But that takes a lot of memorization. Honestly, it's just better to play the game normally. When you beat night 5, the kid realizes that he's going to be stuck in this place forever and wants to get revenge on the man who killed him. Then the extras are unlocked, where you can access night 6. It's just a harder version of night 5. When you beat it, you get a well done message. The extras menu actually explains the entire lore of 5 Nights at Billy Bob's. There's not really much to say that I haven't already said though. If it wasn't clear already, you play as a child who is mentioned to have been murdered and got the old location shut down. It does add that the vandal who smashed Billy Bob is actually the killer. Now the dead child is stuck haunting the pizzeria forever. So that's the end of 5 Nights at Billy Bob's 2 and the 5 Nights at Billy Bob's series. This is one of RickyG's better games. It actually has tension and is more balanced than the previous games, even if it does rely on RNG. This has some pretty good minigames and has a surprisingly immersive atmosphere with not much to work with. It's still not that good of a game though, but it's not awful. After 5 Nights at Billy Bob's 2 came out, RickyG focused on fixing some of his older games instead of making new ones. I mentioned that FNaF 3 Game Maker Edition and 5 Nights at Billy Bob's 2 were updated. This is also when the cancelled 5 Nights at Toy Freddy's 4 updates were being made. There was also a cancelled FNaF 4 Game Maker Edition update which would have added Nightmare. Then came the 31st of October 2015. This was one of the biggest days in FNaF history. This was when FNaF was just coming off its second highest peak, and with it being a horror game, everyone went crazy on Halloween. Countless projects were released on that day. Songs, animations, games, you name it. And of course, the Halloween update for FNaF 4, which yes, ended up being a disappointment, but you get it. Halloween 2015 was the real deal for FNaF fans, and RickyG was one of the many people who released something on that day. 5 Nights at Freddy's Game Maker Edition Remastered. Yeah, probably not the kind of game you were expecting. It makes sense though, as he was trying to fix his older games at this point, and FNAF 1 Game Maker Edition was his first FNAF fan game. Well, not really, RickyG just forgot that FNAF 2 top-down existed. At the start of night 1 you get instructions on how to play. There isn't any phone calls and you once again play as Floyd Cook. This is definitely the best looking FNAF Game Maker Edition game. It looks a lot more polished and very accurate to the look of FNAF 1. This adds a new mechanism that wasn't in the original FNAF 1. You have a music box behind you. You have to keep looking behind you every once in a while. You don't actually have to wind up the music box though, you just need to look at it for a second. If you don't look at it, you'll get killed by the puppet. So last time RickyG tried to copy one of the official FNAF games, it turned out okay. So you'd think that this would also be a solid FNAF 1 clone. No, it's not. It's really bad. It's better than the original FNAF 1 Game Maker Edition, but it's still far from being a good game. The animatronics are a lot more aggressive than they are in the original FNAF 1. Bonnie goes to the left and Chica goes to the right. It's not really that big of a deal because you only need to close the door for 1 or 2 seconds. Also, Foxy is a joke. Once again, you'll hear him running regardless of what camera you're viewing, or if you're even viewing the camera at all. But Freddy. Oh my god, Freddy, you terrible cunt. He is so goddamn fast and is not fooled by watching him. You basically just have to keep the right door shut the whole time. You don't even have enough time to shut the door when it's at the East Hall. I don't know why Freddy was altered like this. He was the biggest threat in the original game, so what's the point in turning him into Cocaine Bear? There's one more addition to the gameplay, and that's the hallucinations. They can appear in the office. The hallucinations are Toy Freddy, Toy Bonnie, Toy Chica, Mangle, Springtrap, Balloon Boy, Nightmare, and even Billy Bob. I didn't see them because I didn't make it past night 3, since it's either impossible or extremely RNG based. I can imagine you just have to look away from them or pull up the monitor, or they'll jump scare you. Maybe they'll drain your power or disable a door or camera. There's certainly potential for these characters, but if the gameplay is so bad that I never encountered them, I don't think it really matters. When you beat Night 5, it tells you that Floyd tried to destroy the animatronics after his shift ended, but the day shift employee caught him and stopped him. Then he gets fired. So is Floyd Cook supposed to be the purple guy in the FNAF Game Maker Edition timeline? During 2014, quite a few people believed that Mike Schmidt was a killer. However, this theory died down a lot as the lore expanded. This could very well not be true though, as the only proof that suggests this is that Floyd Cook tries to smash the animatronics William Afton style. Apparently there is a Fun with Freddy minigame that I found in the files, but I don't know if it's actually in the game. Night 6 is a custom night. Yeah, again, you can only decide who's active and who isn't active. After beating Night 6, you get a thank you message. That's really all there is to say about FNAF Game Maker Edition Remastered. It's a poor FNAF 1 recreation that doesn't really have anything notable except for its ending. Even if Freddy was nerfed drastically, it'd still be a pretty boring game that lacks the feel that FNAF 1 has. A few weeks later, in November 2015, RickyG gave up on updating any more of his FNAF fan games. However, he wasn't done with FNAF fan games. For a brief period of time, RickyG actually had a minor involvement in an early version of what would become one of the biggest games of 2016. And the complete version is often regarded as being one of the best FNAF fan games of all time. The Joy of Creation. Yes, you heard me. He was credited as a co-writer and sprite artist for the original T-Jog that was being worked on during late 2015. It's unknown if he ever actually made anything for the game or helped shape it into the highly influential T-Jog Reborn or story mode, but it's still crazy how the developer behind all these games was part of the development team for the Joy of Creation at one point. RickyG released another FNAF fan game a month later, that being Fazbear Studio. It was released as an alpha in January 2016. RickyG not only became well known for his FNAF fan games, but also for his Game Maker tutorials. Fazbear Studio was intended on being a combination of both of those. In this game, you can customize your FNAF 1 remake. It has the FNAF 1 visuals and actually runs quite well. However, this game was cancelled shortly after the alpha was released, and some features were either never programmed or were very broken. You have Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy and Golden Freddy, who you can decide to have active or not, and what time they become active at. However, if you decide to make them active on a later hour, they just won't be active at all. You can also disable some of the cameras, stop the door lights from working, give yourself infinite power, decide how fast the power drains, and how active the animatronics are, and by that I mean easy or hard. You can also put plushes on your desk. The animatronics act how they act in FNAF Game Maker Edition Remastered, and I've just gone over how bad that game is. I said that you can customize your FNAF 1 remake. Well, actually you can only customize a night, because the load game feature was never programmed. You were also going to be able to customize your own minigame, but that was also never added. The idea of an engine where you can make your own FNaF fangame was definitely an out there idea at the time, but there's so little you can do in this game. It's basically just a FNaF Game Maker Edition Remastered custom night, but you can do a bit more with it and it removes the puppet. I don't really have anything else to say about it. Sometime after Fazbear Studio was made, RickyG left the FNaF community. This was something he was planning on doing for a while. FNaF Game Maker Edition Remastered was made as a celebration of the anniversary of his first game's development. However though, he was not even close to being done with game development. On the 2nd of February 2016, he released an Undertale fangame called Uppertale. This was actually a very popular game within the Undertale community and by far the most successful game that RickyG had made at this point. In fact, RickyG is a lot more well known for this game than any of his FNaF fangames. So I'm sure a few of you would be shocked to find that he actually made dozens of FNaF fangames. In fact, RickyG actually did release quite a few non-FNaF related games during 2014 and 2015, such as Cave Game 2D, Galactic Wars, Flash Drive Wars, and even a God.io Game Maker Edition, but this video is focusing on his FNaF fangames. He did eventually release another FNaF fangame. On the 7th of October 2016, the most hyped FNaF game of all time, Sister Location, was released. The first half of 2016 was a low point for FNaF, and a lot of people were leaving the community, but came back after Sister Location was announced. RickyG came out of FNaF fangame retirement and began working on Sister Location Game Maker Edition. While not as big as it was in 2015, Halloween 2016 was still a big day for FNaF fans, and it's also when the demo for Sister Location Game Maker Edition was released. This game doesn't have any voice acting and instead it's just text. It opens with a cutscene where William Afton describes Baby. The gameplay starts off the same as the original. The Hander unit informs you about the place. You go through the vent into the control module. You shock Ballora and Funtime Foxy. You then go to Circus Gallery control module and shock Baby. After that though, it becomes a very different game. This demo only contained one night, but it doesn't end after you finish checking the animatronics. Afterwards you have to go to the breaker room via Ballora Gallery. This segment is actually in 3D in a similar style to Doom. You can't actually die during this bit though, and you'll reach a breaker room regardless. When you get to the breaker room, you're told to pull up the monitor and program Funtime Freddy to go to the parts and service room. When you open the monitor though, you get an error. Then Funtime Freddy starts talking to you. Funtime Freddy says that he will be your best friend and asks what made you visit him. You're then given an option to either say he needs to be fixed or I have crippling depression. In response to that, Funtime Freddy says, you think you have it bad? Put yourself in my shoes. I'm stuck here in this fucking breaker room with nothing but a hand puppet to talk to. I'm desperate for friends. I question why I'm even still alive. Regardless of your choice, he will say that he hates going to the parts and service, but he'll do it for you. You then go to the parts and service through Funtime Auditorium. You once again can't die during this bit. When you get to the parts and service, Freddy's faceplates open after you press his nose. They plan on making it more complicated to open his faceplates because a kid would honk his nose and would be scarred for life after his faceplates abruptly open. The power then starts malfunctioning, which causes the Hander unit to go offline. Freddy then tells it he was pretending to be deactivated so the animatronics can roam free. Circus Baby then comes into the parts and service and wonders why you came here. She then tells you that the animatronics hate being stuck there and want to be free. Then Baby knocks you out. Then the credits roll. And that's all that was ever released for the game. Sometime after the demo came out, Sister Location Game Maker Edition was cancelled. This was probably because Sister Location is a complicated game to recode, or RickyG simply lost interest in making it. The demo is more so a teaser than an actual game since it's impossible for you to actually fail. One last thing about this game is it actually got into a bit of drama with another developer. In November 2016, Clarken123 started working on a 2D remake of Sister Location, which he titled as Sister Location Game Maker Edition. This game began development literally one day after the demo for RickyG's game was released. RickyG found out about this and asked Clarken to change the name. Clarken claimed that he didn't know that RickyG made his own Sister Location Game Maker Edition, and he seemed to have not even heard of the FNaF Game Maker Edition series. And he tried to make the argument that it's not plagiarism because RickyG's was spelled GME whilst Clarken's was just Game Maker Edition. This didn't amount to anything though, and the game was complete on the 15th of December 2016 and the game drop page remains up. Sister Location Game Maker Edition was the last FNaF fangame that RickyG made for a very long time. It's pretty clear that his return to the FNaF fangame scene was just a phase, and after that he went back to working on another Undertale fangame that he was making called Don't Forget, which was even more successful than Uppertale. It had a story mode and online mode. It was first released in 2018 but has received countless updates since, with the most recent one being from July 2025. An April Fool's build of the game was released in 2020, 2021 and 2022. In 2021 and 22, RickyG went back to his roots and made a FNaF fan game, which was posing as a new build for Don't Forget. The game is Five Nights at Harlow's. It was a FNaF fan game with the characters from Don't Forget. What's really funny is that the 2021 version literally took place in a FNaF 1 Game Maker Edition location. This must have confused the fuck out of Don't Forget fans. The 2022 version is almost the exact same game, but it takes place at an original location. Despite being a joke, this is actually a proper game with 7 nights. It takes place at Harlow's Burgers and Shakes. This is the first RickyG FNaF fan game in 4 years, yet it maintains the same feel as one of the FNaF Game Maker Edition games, but it looks better. This game doesn't really feel like a joke, to be honest. I think it was mainly just the fact that it's not what people were expecting. The only thing that's really funny about this game is that the characters call you a fat little cunt when they jump scare you, which is taken from this iconic Xbox 360 voice message.
Well, I'll tell you what, you fat little cunt.
You have a door on your left and a vent on your right. You can close them both and use a light on the door. You have a power usage which goes down when you use a light, close a door or vent, or use the cameras. On night 1, Azrael and Harlow are active. They'll attack from either the door or the vent. When they're in the vents, you can only see them when they're in cam 9. They'll have 2 phases. When it gets to their second phase, you have to close a vent. They'll also have 2 phases in cam 5. When they're in their second phase, you'll be able to see them using the door light. You then have to close the door. On night 2, Sans becomes active. He'll be in cam 6. You have to keep watching him or he will run at you. You won't see that he's left the cove or him running down the hallway, you'll just hear him. You have to very quickly close the door and you're given barely any time to react, making him the biggest threat in the game. The strategy is to keep checking cam 5, 6 and 9. You'll have enough power by the end of the night during the first 4 nights as long as you don't get bad RNG. Also, yes, finally a RickyG game that is not scripted. How long the characters spend in the cameras or at your door or vent is randomized. If your power is below 20% at 5 AM, you should only check the cameras occasionally and when in the office, be ready to click the door. On night 3, Kara becomes active. She can attack from both the door and vent. She acts the same as Azrael and Harlow, but more aggressive. This game does rely quite a bit on RNG, but it's actually intense and remains that way the whole game. It actually has strategy and is fun to play. It's not a great game by any means, but this is the first RickyG FNaF fan game with a Sin Survive style gameplay in 5 years, and the last one was abysmal, so it's certainly a glow up. There is lore to the game. The phone guy is Dr. W.D. Gaster III, who owns Harlow's Burgers and Shakes and is conducting an experiment which you agree to be part of. The characters don't have a soul and are after you because you have a soul. Dr. Gaster wants to see how the characters act around someone who has a soul for 5 nights.
During the daytime, there seems to be recurring reports of the characters attacking patrons with powerful souls such as yours. To study their behavior more closely, I've placed you here in this office during our closed hours to see how they respond to your presence in the building.
On night 4, he finds out the reason the characters are after you is because they sense determination within you.
I've begun examining the data that's been collected so far, and what I have discovered is quite fascinating. It seems that our characters specifically target human souls and have no interest in monster souls. This explains why they only get aggressive towards a minority of our patrons, as most of our customers are monsters. Since you are a human, the characters will become hyper-focused on trying to steal your soul, because they sense determination flowing within you.
On night 5, you get a phone call from Kara.
My name is Kara, but you probably knew that already. I just want to take this opportunity to leave a message for you myself, since this might be your last night with us. I can't believe that you're leaving so soon. It feels like we've barely gotten to know each other, you know? Well, if you really gotta leave, I understand. But before you go, you really gotta try my specialty. I make a mean chocolate milkshake. What do you say? If you want it, all you have to do is let us into your office. It's as easy as that. We'll take care of everything for you. So just put up your feet, relax, and we'll be there soon.
When you beat night 5, you get a thank you message from Harlow's that says that you can come back for another night. Then night 6 is unlocked. On night 6 you have to change your strategy. If you keep watching the cameras, you'll run out of power, so you instead need to ignore Sans and only view the vent camera. This does mean that if Sans attacks right after you pull up the camera, you're probably dead, but that shouldn't happen too often. After you beat night 6, you unlock 2 things. Night 7, which is just a harder night 6, and week 2, which is another game mode. Yes, there's 2 game modes. This was only in version 2. It's very similar to week 1 in the sense it has the same mechanisms, same characters, but some additional characters. On night 1, Jevil becomes active. You have to keep winding up his music box in cam 8. There is one major change to week 1. You aren't surviving until 6 AM. You have a box with your soul in it. You control it with WASD. When you move, data will fall across the box. You have to touch the data to fill up the data meter. When the meter gets full, you beat the night. Week 2 makes week 1 look like one of RickyG's old games that can be beaten by doing nothing. Because you have to be collecting the data, you'll be so much slower at checking the enemies. You could just keep pressing A and D mindlessly, but that'll make the night last so much longer and it'll still be off-putting. Luckily, you only need to wind up the music box occasionally when the warning comes up. Night 2 in week 2 is harder than night 7 in week 1. The enemies are more aggressive and it introduces Spamton, who'll make a pop-up appear in one of your cameras. When you hear a ring, you have to look for it and close it. Gasterbot becomes active on night 3. He'll move around the cameras. When he's in cam 5, his next step is your office. When you see him in your office, you have to press a control shock on your desk. On night 4, Freddy becomes active. He'll be in cam 1. He will start to leave every once in a while. You'll get a warning when he moves and you have to go to cam 1 and play music. Night 5, 6 and 7 are just harder versions of each other. There's also a night 8 which is a custom night. You can only set each character to 0 or 20. When you beat night 8, it turns out that the whole game was just a dream that Harlow had after playing Five Nights at Freddy's, possibly FNaF Game Maker Edition. So that's the end of Five Nights at Harlow's. It's not a great game, it's just a standard FNaF fan game that's fun, but it's nothing remarkable. For something that was released as an April Fool's joke, this is actually pretty good and easily the best RickyG FNaF fan game. It is nice that he did end it on a high note, as this is probably the last FNaF fan game he'll ever make. Like I said earlier, at some point RickyG deleted all of his FNaF fan games. However, on the 23rd of July 2021, he released FNaF Game Maker Edition and Friends, which contained FNaF Game Maker Edition 1 through 4 Remastered, 5 Decaying Nights, 5 Nights at Billy Bob's 1 and 2, and 5 Nights to Destroy. The rest of his games weren't uploaded onto the archive. He planned on adding more games, but he never went along with it. However, most of the games that he didn't re-upload were later found by Pnod. They made a game drop page which archived the games that I've linked in the description. Five Nights at Toy Freddy's 1 through 3, the remake and One Night at Green Toy Freddy's were found earlier in January 2021 by Leonard Bobley. Before we conclude, I'm going to rank all 23 of RickyG's publicly available FNaF fan games from worst to best. If any of his other games resurface, I will play them and add them to the ranking in the description. Number 23, Five Nights at Illuminati's. You have to beat the game by mostly doing nothing or you'll die and have to restart from night 1, while also being the worst looking RickyG game. There's just no appeal to this game. Number 22, Five Nights at Freddy's Game Maker Edition. Poorly made FNaF 1 clone with very clunky gameplay that barely functions. Number 21, Five Nights at Freddy's Game Maker Edition Remastered. Another disjointed FNaF 1 clone. It would have been ranked higher if Freddy wasn't so bogged. Number 20, Fazbear Studio. It feels a bit unfair to rank this game so low as it was never finished, but it's basically just FNaF Game Maker Edition Remastered Custom Night. Number 19, One Night at Green Toy Freddy's. As bad as One Night at Green Toy Freddy's is, it functions as intended. It's a joke game and nothing more. Number 18, Five Nights at Freddy's 2 Game Maker Edition. It's more functional than the first game, but it's still a complete mess. Number 17, Five Nights at Freddy's 3 Game Maker Edition. You can beat the game by doing nothing, although it looks better than the previous Game Maker Edition games. Number 16, Five Nights at Toy Freddy's 2. You can also beat the game by doing mostly nothing, but there's a bit more to it. Number 15, Five Nights at Toy Freddy's 4. The last thing you want in your FNaF fan game is to be able to beat the whole night by just charging the generator, but as it turns out, that might be what you get. Number 14, Five Nights to Destroy. It's an interesting idea, but it did nothing with it. The reason it's ranked this high is because it has no bugs. Number 13, Sister Location Game Maker Edition. Same thing really, there's nothing to the game, but it functions and it isn't completely boring when you first play it. Number 12, 5 Decaying Nights. You just have to keep checking one camera and you're good. At least you actually have to do something though. Number 11, Five Nights at Billy Bob's. The reason this is ranked so high is because you can actually play it without exploits. It's the same thing every night though and it gets boring quickly. Number 10, Five Nights at Illuminati's 2. It's way better than the first game, but it still sucks. It's the same thing every night, but it's harder than Five Nights at Billy Bob's, which is why I prefer it ever so slightly. Number 9, Five Nights at Toy Freddy's. It feels weird having this ranked so much higher than the second and fourth game, but you can't completely cheese this one, you can only partially cheese it. Number 8, Five Nights at Toy Freddy's Remake. It's literally just the first game with minigames and a better story. Number 7, Five Nights at Freddy's 3. This is the best of the Five Nights at Freddy's games. It's the most playable one and can occasionally be intense, but it's still bugged. Number 6, Five Nights at Freddy's Game Maker Edition The Return. This is the first game that you can actually play as intended. It's still not good though. All you have to do is watch the cameras until something happens, and the threat is easily dealt with. Number 5, Five Nights at Freddy's 2 Game Maker Edition Revenge. This game isn't that boring, it does intrigue you, but not much really happens. It's ultimately still a boring game that doesn't have much challenge to it. Number 4, Five Nights at Freddy's 4 Game Maker Edition. This is definitely the best of the FNaF Game Maker Edition games. It's still just a much worse FNaF 4, but it doesn't have any bugs, so it's at least tolerable. Number 3, Five Nights at Billy Bob's 2. This game being RNG based actually works in its favour and makes it less boring and more intense. It's probably the most atmospheric RickyG game, but it's still a game where you do the same thing every night. Number 2, One Long Nightmare. Yes, it's a FNaF 4 copy, but it's the most intense RickyG game, and out of the 2015 games, it's definitely the hardest one. Number 1, Five Nights at Harlow's. I mean, come on, there's no competition. It's the only actual good FNaF fan game that RickyG made. When looking back, most of RickyG's FNaF fan games are terrible and really haven't aged well. But these games will forever hold a special place in my heart, as well as others. These were some of the first FNaF fan games I heard about and have played a part in getting me to where I am now. By late 2015, people had forgotten about RickyG's FNaF fan games and they were already seen as dated relics. Although it is nice to see that RickyG found his place with Undertale fan games, which are well respected and he continues to make games to this day. As opposed to a lot of other FNaF fan game developers at the time who want nothing to do with their old games and oftentimes completely gave up on making games. I can't exactly say that I'm surprised that no one ever talks about these games anymore, but I think it's crazy that some of these games were amongst the most popular FNaF fan games during a time where FNaF was at its peak. These are some of the most forgotten, influential FNaF fan games out there, as most people who knew about them back in the day don't remember them anymore. So I hope this video took you back to 2015, as we remember some classic FNaF fan games.